Welcome to our May 21st board meeting. My name is Rick Cruz. I'm chairman of the board. Today I am joined by my fellow board members, Steve Bumbauer to our right, Naomi Shelton, my vice chair Saba Beretta, Darren Woodruff, and ex officio member Scott Pearson. Also have two of our board members joining by phone this evening, Ricardo Genjum and Don Seufer. Ricardo and Don, could I get some sign you're both on?
Hello, I'm here. It's Ricardo.
Good evening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. We are going to start, as we do, with our public hearing first. But before we begin the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, can I ask if there are any public officials in attendance who would like to make any remarks? We're going to ask for public comment in a second, but thank you. Okay, so then I will go to any members of the public who wish to address the board at this time. You'll see there are many vote items on the agenda this evening. So this is a time before we get into the specific items for anyone to come forward. So, ma'am, if you'd like to come up, if there's anyone else in advance of it, please do come forward. I think that's Josh. Great, so please introduce yourself and then I just press.
Hi. I am Valerie Jablow, a DC citizen, concerned that students and the public were treated poorly by the oversight and closure of Washington Mathematics Science Technology High School. Problems with the school finances were apparent as early as 2014, according to the most recent financial audit review I accessed, released in July 2017. That document also shows that the school's debt ratio was at or near 1 in recent years. Also, as shown by 2017 documents the city paper received via FOIA, even after charter board staff met with school staff in May 2017 and weeks later proposed a fiscal corrective action plan, the school appears not to have been helped, and nor was a public alarm obviously raised. Earlier this calendar year, I accessed on the charter board website the school's 20-year review dated January 2018. Since then, that review was pulled from the website, and my queries to charter board staff about it have gone unanswered. As I recall, that review recommended continuing operations and was only mildly concerned with the school's finances. Recently, a different 20-year review dated March 12, 2018 was added in its place on the website and raises significant concerns with the school's finances. Also, the FOIA documents obtained by city papers show that the charter board members were told that charter board staff began raising concerns about the school's finances only in late 2017, when it was in fact much earlier in 2017. There were also repeated statements that the school's main asset, its building, was overvalued at $9 million. However, the city's assessment for at least 2 years is close to $10 million. With Douglas Development buying up most of the entire city block in May 2017 and recently breaking ground there, the school's fate appeared sealed when it was ordered to sell its main asset within a month to stay in business. In that time, Douglas bought the school for $6.25 million, significantly less than its assessed value and not leaving enough for the school to continue. Neither the school nor the public appear well served by such financial oversight, which led to a rush to close the school with no obvious notification to the public. That also seems to have disadvantaged the school with regard to the developer at the direct expense of the school and its students. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have the FOIA materials, by the way, and I'm happy to send you all a copy of my testimony, which is footnoted, and I have the FOIA materials here on a thumb drive, if you're interested.
Thank you, no, very much.
So
If
I could respond, I think you did a good job of summarizing the situation, and I have, as I have before the City Council, personally take responsibility. I believe the school's assessment that their building was worth $9 million, and based on that, believe that despite the fiscal imbalances that the school was facing, that they would be able to tap into the equity on that building to get through the year. And that was an error in judgment. It was not the staff's fault, as was noted in your testimony. The staff flagged their concerns, and so it was my error for believing that that building was worth $9 million and not independently assessing it, and that led us to where we are today.
It was the city's assessment, not anything else, and I can hardly believe that the city's assessment was more than 30% off.
Yeah. And the school was saying that they had offers for the building at $9 million, and so I think the lesson learned is that we need to be more careful to do our own assessments when the fiscal solvency of the school is based solely on the value of their building asset.
The FOIA materials make clear that the staff was concerned earlier in 2017 than what the charter board members were given notice of. So the concerns that the staff was worried about were not conveyed to the charter board, and indeed there were concerns as early as 2014 that the charter board website makes very clear. And in addition, you represented to the charter board members that in fact you had raised the staff had raised the alarm in late 2017, when in fact it was very clear from the materials that the city paper received via FOIA that that was not the case, that in fact it was much earlier in 2017. But so
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have one more? Oh, we have maybe two more.
Hello, I'm Mercedes Williams. I'm a senior that attends Somerset Prep DC. An incident happened February 28th. An email was sent out and it stated, tired of y'all siding with the other seniors. All you did was sow me dreams since the 8th grade. And then another girl came behind me and said, I'm going to blow the school up. The only part that I said was, I'm tired of y'all selling me dreams since 8th grade. I have two letters that I would like to read. The first letter is...
I'm sorry. Could you speak a little more closely into the... I'm having a little... With the echo, I think we're having a little trouble hearing. Sorry. I just want to make sure we hear you.
The first letter that I'm reading is the apology letter that I wrote to the principal.
Would you mind starting over again just so we make sure we hear everything? Thank you.
So I attend Somerset Prep DC. I'm a senior. I'm Mercedes Williams. An email was sent out stating the boy started it off and said, I'm tired of y'all siding with the other seniors. I went behind him and said, all you did was sow me dreams since the 8th grade. And then another girl came behind me and said that she was going to blow the school up. So I have two letters that I would like to read. It's an apology letter. It said, due to the incident that happened February 28th, I would like to say that what I said in the email was not threatening to staff nor children that attend Somerset Prep DC. I understand that the involvement of myself in this incident was not a wise choice, but again, what I said was not harmful to anyone. The principal of Somerset Prep DC knows my character more than anyone at Somerset due to her past years of teaching me. She knows that I am a respectful, independent, brilliant student. She knows this because she was the one who inducted me into the National Junior Honor Society and even spoke very highly of me and my great characteristics that I show to peers and also staff. All of my achievements throughout my 5 years at Somerset Prep show that I was never a troubled child. My principal knows this because she and other staff always ask me to open up ceremonies and other events. I have been involved in so many activities such as basketball, sports manager, sophisticated ladies program, debate team, community service, the school morning news broadcaster show, SGA president, and SGA vice president. I understand that the decision that I have made was not the smartest. I'm just asking for another chance to be that great student I am because everyone makes mistakes. The second letter that I wrote was how I've been treated since I came back. I feel like I have been a target since I came back off of suspension. My first day back from suspension, as I got out the car to go in the building, the seniors and teachers that spreaded rumors about me getting expelled were talking about me and looking at me with a very nasty look on their face, even started to laugh at me as I went into the school. After going through that, I was very uncomfortable and felt that I was singled out because I said in the email that selling me dreams since the 8th grade has to stop. As the days and weeks went by, administration and most teachers and even the principal of Somerset Prep decided that they were going to treat me very nasty. One incident that occurred was the assistant athletic director got on the intercom and said, "Will all seniors report to Mr. Kenner's class?" And it was repeated twice. So me being a senior, I went downstairs. As I walked into the class, I just felt very uncomfortable with the talking about me and laughing at me. I took my seat, and one of the teachers that were in there waited for all the seniors to get into the room and shouted very loud to me, "Get out." I have never been so humiliated and ashamed until she said those words to me. Then she came to the door and said, "I've got to participate in all my senior events," and shut the door in my face. Constantly being reminded that I could not participate in the most exciting part of my senior year crushes me every day that I walk into Somerset Prep DC. I have always been that student who never misses a day of school and always on time. As of now, I hate going to school because I know every day I will be mistreated and constantly have a teacher throw in my face that I can't participate in certain events of my senior year. Another incident that happened was a senior took it upon herself to spit on my locker and 6 more lockers. The spit was just dripping down from my locker. It was just so nasty to see. The senior who spit on my locker got to participate in the senior trip and still gets to participate in all senior events. On May 16th, I entered Somerset Prep DC. The principal was checking bags, which she never done before. The security guard that checks my bag every day was standing beside her. The security guard was proceeding to grab my bag to check it, but the principal grabbed it and started to check it. She flipped and tossed my bag. It hurts me so much because she was checking me as if I had something that was harmful in my bag. My bag was so messy. Papers that were in folders were now all over my bag, and I had to step aside just to make it neat again. The day after that, the same thing happened again, but by the behavior specialist. She checked my fanny pack and found that I had an Advil and medicine for my cramps because I cramp really bad and get very intense headaches. She took my medicine. That day, I got a really bad headache, and I didn't go to her to get my medicine because I felt uncomfortable with her dealing with my medicine because she is one of the teachers that sits around and talks about me along with other administration and teachers. I felt as though I am a target. She checked my bag, and when I turned around, she was gone. My overall experience at Somerset Prep DC has been very horrible. And I'm just asking you all to appeal your decision on letting me participate in my senior prom.
I'm assuming, Mercedes, you've spoken to the principal and...
Yes.
Okay, if for this evening, if we can just make sure that a member of staff, Scott, speaks to Mercedes and her mom, who I believe is in the audience, and we'll follow up from there.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Mercedes.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Irene Holtzman, the Executive Director of Focus, a nonprofit that strengthens and empowers the charter sector by advocating for and strengthening school autonomy, equity, and quality. I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the enrollment ceiling increase policy, where public comment is closing tonight. For those of you who follow our work, it won't be surprising that the first thing I'm going to talk about is the School Reform Act. The enrollment ceiling increase policy, while I know this is not the strongest argument for some of the board members, is not in line with what the School Reform Act intended when we think about the duties of the Public Charter School Board. The PCSB is given the authority to monitor school operations, ensuring schools apply with applicable laws, monitor progress in meeting student academic targets in the charter, and ensuring that schools report on their progress annually. In addition, the SRA says that revisions to a school's charter be subject to the same approval requirements as the initial petition. When we look at the proposed policy, the requirements far outstrip anything ever imagined by the SRA. In addition to academic achievement, outcomes that may or may not be aligned with the school's individual goals, there's also requirements for community engagement, re-enrollment, discipline, and other metrics that are not student achievement based. I understand that in a vacuum, this is not a compelling argument for changing the policy in any way. It's clear that the board values these inputs and best practices and wants to center its authorizing around those best practices. I do want to think about the practical implications of the way the policy is written today. When we ran the data for who would be permitted to increase their enrollment ceilings under this policy, it's really highly correlated with the proportion of at-risk students that a school serves. Nearly 70% of schools with an at-risk population below 40% would be eligible to increase their enrollment ceilings, while only 5% of the schools serving at-risk populations of above 60%. When we think of the mission, meaning, and passion of many of our schools, we know they exist to provide high-quality educational options for those who are most underserved and disenfranchised by the educational system. If we create policies that ultimately favor schools that serve few at-risk students and that limit the expansion of schools serving greater proportions, are we really delivering on the promise of closing the opportunity gap? A letter came from LEAs today that has 2 suggestions on how to improve the policy, and I'll leave it to you guys to read those from them. Yeah, you can have that.
I know we have some others who want to probably weigh in on the ECI policy as well. And as you know, tonight was another public hearing before the vote in June. And
another one.
This evening is another opportunity for us to discuss. And appreciate you coming forward. And certainly appreciate you and the many LEAs who participated in the various task forces across the last 6 months, it seems. So.
Yeah, and we appreciate the board's engagement. I don't want to say, like, by no means has the board or its staff been tone deaf. I think we've come a really long way. We're just not quite there yet. And so the couple of practical suggestions that the LEAs have, I think, would be really helpful.
Good evening. Josh Boots, Executive Director of Empower K-12, a local nonprofit that helps support data-driven best practices at schools. I have 2 things. One of them is the ECI, but with some data behind it, and the other one is about research and evaluation. In terms of, this is basically what Irene was talking about too, in terms of like, there are 9 different, well, one, I actually want to thank the board staff for offering something that is data-driven. And I think that we're getting there. I think some of the things need to be a little more nuanced, but the fact that you're creating data-driven policies and practices, I think, is commendable, in my opinion. There are 9 different metrics on them. All of them are highly statistically significantly correlated with at-risk. That includes spring to spring median growth percentile in ELA, spring to spring median growth percentile in math, PARC level 3 ELA, PARC level 3 plus in math, PARC level 4 plus in ELA, PARC level 4 plus in math. Re-enrollment rate, attendance, and discipline rate are all statistically significantly correlated with the percent of economically disadvantaged students the school serves. Particularly, one of the things I think that might be focused on again is the re-enrollment rate. The re-enrollment rate for Tier 1 schools with less than 35% at-risk students is 92.5%. The re-enrollment rate for Tier 1 schools with greater than 65% at-risk was 79.4%. So having a value at 85% would make increasing your enrollment ceiling in wards 7 and 8 practically impossible. In terms of, I did look at the data and looked at schools that within the last 3 years, granted some of these are part of multi-campus LEAs, but they were single campus LEAs and were subject to the single campus LEA business rules. These schools, one time in the last 3 years, would not have, these are Tier 1 schools that wouldn't have been eligible to increase their enrollment. That includes Basis, DC Middle School, Cedar Tree Academy, Center City, Shaw, which is a Empower K-12 Bold Performance School, DC Bilingual, DC Prep Anacostia, DC Prep Edgewood Middle, Eagle Academy, Early Childhood Academy, Friendship Blue Pierce, Ingenuity Prep, DC Arts and Tech, DC Grow, KIPP DC Grow, KIPP DC, Northeast Academy, and Sella. All wouldn't be able to increase their enrollments to serve kids, and these are all Tier 1 schools.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. The comments of the board.
Can I just respond to one thing that Josh said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important when you Josh, well, I don't know where Josh went, but when you characterize a school as not being able to grow, it's important to remember that the policy allows you to miss up to 2 of the indicators and still be able to grow. And so I think it's not that if you miss the re-enrollment target you wouldn't be able to grow. It's that if you miss the re-enrollment target you would have missed 1 indicator. And as I said, the policy allows you to miss up to 2.
Okay. Our friends from Eagle.
Good evening, Mr. Cruz and members of the Public Charter School Board. My name is Joe Smith, CEO of Eagle Academy Public Charter School, and with me is...
My name is Royston Little. I'm the principal of Eagle Academy, Congress Heights location.
We appreciate this opportunity to testify regarding the enrollment ceiling increase policy. The proposed changes to the ECI policy has an approach what appears on the surface to be fair. All charter schools have to meet the same standards to increase enrollment. In parents, this can be deceiving, particularly when the regulations continue to discriminate against the most underserved populations in the district. The new ECI policy punishes the nonprofit charter schools who are successful in serving these populations. Public charter schools like Eagle Academy, who educate a high percentage of at-risk students, deal with a large number of children who live in extreme poverty, are behind academically, experience homelessness, or are transient, are in the foster care system and move a lot, and who often struggle with special needs. In order for public policies to be responsive, fair, and effective, they must take into account statistics like this. In 2016, Ward 3 had a child poverty rate of 2.9%. Ward 4 had a child poverty rate of 13%. Ward 2 had a child poverty rate of 4.6%. Compare that with the child poverty rate of Ward 8, 48.5%. The family income also tells the story. Ward 3, $215,000 a year. Ward 4, $101,000 a year. Ward 2, $182,000 a year. And Ward 8, $24,000 a year.
The policy as written will oppress experienced successful public charter schools operating in the toughest population anywhere in the United States from expanding to continue to educate most in need students at a very high level. For example, when PCSB was testing a new tiered system, Eagle's Ward 8 school was a Tier 1 school. When the standards went into effect, Eagle became a Tier 2 school by just 4.5%. And where were those points lost? The points were lost in re-enrollment and attendance. You want to establish 85% as a target for re-enrollment in wards where stability is almost non-existent for low-income populations, the very population that Eagle and other charter schools serve. The way schools with 3- and 4-year-olds are measured in terms of attendance is absolutely unfair. There is no legal attendance requirement for these families. Eagle uses the common lottery recommended by PCSB. We cannot force parents of 3- and 4-year-olds to bring their students to school 85% of the time. The attendance rate for this population has to be revisited, particularly in wards that have the densest poverty rate. Eagle enrolls 30 to 70 homeless children every year. When the district government finds places for them to live, it's often not near Eagle. These families are struggling. Just alone, Eagle Academy pays $80 a month for 70 families. So that's $560 a month, $5,060 a month, $56,000 a year to help these students, families, to get them to school. Sometimes the families do not want their children to take taxis to school by themselves, and they do not want to put their children on a metro system alone. Now, please think of your children. If you have children from 3 to 5, would you trust your child 3 to 8 to take metro alone unsupervised? Eagle has a large population of low-income students. When the opportunity arises for a family to move to a place that has a lower rent or when a family is forced out of their home and has to move because they're in transitional housing, public housing, or rental units. The families move, and our students moves as well. Just in 1 week, we had a father who came out of jail the same day that his child's mother was arrested for shooting another person. Now, these students had to withdraw from Eagle Academy. Have children in witness protection programs. They must leave Eagle. They go to another school, usually a charter school, because of their positive experience at Eagle Academy.
I'll skip because we're out of time. Yeah.
Yeah, my microphone. I certainly, and I think all of our board members can appreciate the challenges in the lower income communities around mobility and re-enrollment. So my question is, do you have, and we heard similar things from Josh a few minutes ago, do you have a suggested remedy if you feel that the 85% is punitive? What would you like to see in terms of a potential change?
Certainly something closer to 75% would be realistic for our community. We usually range in re-enrollment, Max, you knows this better than I do, but usually range somewhere between 73 and, believe it or not, 86% 1 year. But that was a while ago. Mostly we're in the upper 70s.
Okay, and I like to keep in mind, we're talking about enrollment increase, not approvals or renewals or continuance. So this, I think the philosophy that we've taken is, in terms of schools that we want to approve for growth, that's going to be a higher bar than some of our other metrics, because we only want to see the best and most high quality of our schools actually grow and expand. So I'm struggling with, should we accept the status quo in terms of what we're seeing with the re-enrollment, or should we have a more aspirational target?
What I'm suggesting to you is you should look at the populations that you have in each ward and what would be appropriate there. You have much more stable wards in the higher income areas. Gee, you and I both know this goes back to research in the 70s. We can say that, okay? That's much more stable. That's one of the definitions for that. As soon as you get into lower income populations, you get a lot less stability. So schools cannot possibly, no matter how good the school is, no matter how many things we do to try to hold our children there. You hear how much we're spending on taxis just trying to get people back to school, the homeless kids back into school, and we don't get reimbursed for that. So that's a lot of money coming out of our pocket to try to take care of them. But those kids, if you were their parent, where would you want to put your child? You would want your child to go someplace close to where you're living. So how do we deal with that? And also the gentrification that's starting is also displacing a lot of people. So it's hard for us to meet that very high standard of 85%. It's just unrealistic. It might be realistic in Award 4, realistic in Award 2. But it's not very, and actually now Award 6, where we have a Tier 1 school. Right. And this year we will have high enrollment, even though we will be moving in a year. Okay. So that's what has to be looked at. It can't just be flat numbers all across the city, because it doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Just one, do you think part of the issue with your re-enrollment rate is that you end in third grade, and that's a non-standard grade, and so it causes students to leave the school earlier than they might have if you went through fifth grade?
That is part of the problem. But again, we would have to, we are, as you know, we are going to come to you talking about going to fourth and fifth grade. But I don't know how we're going to do that if we're held to a standard we can't meet. So we go to fifth grade, and then I'm not even sure we can hit that standard at fifth grade. It's a very, I mean, it's not just us. It's a lot of other charter schools who are really performing well. I mean, even compare us to other cities, and we're performing well for the population that we're serving. And you've got to take some of that into consideration.
Thank you.
We'll be talking about ECI policy in just a few more minutes as well with staff. So I appreciate you coming forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Terry, you'd like to move us around a little bit on the public hearing agenda?
Just a bit.
Okay.
We'd like to start with community college prep.
Excellent.
If you want to introduce yourself before I get started. Turn it on.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Connie Spinner, and I am the Executive Director at Community College Prep. I'm joined this evening by our Vice Chair, Mr. Philip Pinnell, who is a well-known community activist here in Ward 8, and by my Director of Operations, Ms. Monica Jones.
And I'm Terry Quinn, Senior Manager on the School Quality and Accountability Team. This is a public hearing to discuss an amendment request submitted by Community College Prep Public Charter School to operate 2 additional facilities in Ward 8. The school proposes to operate 1 classroom at Hope Village and another at the DC Infrastructure Academy to provide pre-vocational academic services for adult students at each site. Obviously, you have representatives here to speak on their behalf. This will be voted on next month. I think that's it.
Great. So I invite you to add anything you'd like to.
I think that on the surface, one might wonder, why in the heck are they doing this? Well, this recommendation or this request is a part of a strategy that is designed to stabilize and maintain our attendance rates and to ensure that the folks who are most in need of the services that we provide are able to access them seamlessly. We started 5 years ago, as most of you know, with an intent to change how things were operating in Southeast, and specifically Ward 7 and Ward 8. That process we've been able to really get our heads around, and we are just in our 6th year figuring out how to do what we do even better. In the process of doing that, we've developed some unique partnership relationships. Currently, we have formal partnerships with 40 nonprofits or DC government agencies. We don't try to do everything alone. We understand what we do well, and we partner with others to do that work. One of the things that we noticed was that when Hope Village came to us, they said, "You're doing a great job with returning citizens. However, we have a target population of them who cannot access your services because they cannot leave the site." What this small adjustment in our site will do for us, and we don't expect to have more than 25 residents involved at any given time, is provide direct instruction in the mornings for those residents of the halfway house who wish it, and begin to work with them in a way that encourages them to transition easily to our site, either at MLK or at MC Terrell. We have had great success either with this population, either through direct assignment from Hope Village or through project empowerment. We currently serve between 150 and 200 project empowerment students because of our direct relationship with the Department of Employment Services. And it means that we are able to save the government a lot of money, because dollars that they previously spent in training contracts and special contracts to nonprofits who didn't have the capacity that we have are now able to be used in other ways because we are marrying public dollar funding stream. So we believe that the Hope Village situation, which will only cost us the price of half day of an instructor's position, the sites will in both cases incur the cost of real estate, of maintenance of the training area, and the technology. We will also be providing the cloud-based software so that they are also getting state-of-the-art instruction. In the case of DOES, they've opened up not far from here a infrastructure academy. And when we met with them, they said, roughly 50% of the people that we're getting want the training, but they don't have the reading levels that allow them to access it. We'd like to have you there for half a day so that when someone comes in and they want to get into a training program but discover that they need to improve their reading and math, they don't have to leave the facility. They can come right to you. We think that's a win-win for them and for us. Again, it's savings of public dollar funding stream. They will maintain the technology. They will maintain the physical space. And it is a beautiful space. Our staff just visited it. It's just recently been renovated. And for whatever time that they have left in that community, because that particular community, which is Hillsdale, where you are, is changing rapidly. So whatever we can do, we need to do quickly, and we need to do in a way that costs the least amount to us and to other government agencies. It connects people to our program and helps us have an efficient way to recruit on a regular basis and create a stream of people coming. So that's our rationale for it historically.
Great. Thank you. Questions from any members of the board?
One other thing that I want to assure you of, has to do with whether or not this has a major impact on us in terms of our enrollment. We intend to continue to enroll as if we were moving to our next level of enrollment, which would be 725. Our commitment from day one has always been that if an adult is able to man up the courage to get to us, we will not turn them away. We have never in the 5 years that we've been operating turned an adult away. And so we don't keep a waiting list because we turn them over fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And as we've gotten more career-related content and more career-related strategies and programs, they finish faster. So we fully expect that this will have no major impact on overpopulating.
What's your current enrollment?
Our current enrollment is 600.
600. Okay.
We're down right now because a lot of folks are completing out. We have begun our summer in recruitment. We've also begun to backfill. We average about 15 students a month from Project Empowerment that we're guaranteed almost.
Can you explain how this will work, this relationship will work, given that we have open enrollment requirements? So how will you ensure that you have space for these people at these two sites while also having open enrollment?
I can only tell you that, as I said, we have maintained open enrollment even when it has required that we exceed our paid numbers. We fully expect to exceed our paid numbers this year. We have economy of scale, and we have funding reserves such that we can accommodate the staff required. We are going to move to hire that staff. Our budgets this year will reflect that. Did I answer?
I think so. I think you're saying you're not going to turn anyone away.
No,
So, right.
we are not.
Right.
We don't do that.
At what point does that become unsustainable, though?
I don't know. We are. We had a initial. If you look at our application, our initial growth plan had been 125 a year up to 1225. So it was not something that we thought a whole lot about, because we didn't think we'd ever kind of get to where we couldn't do it without a rise. We have got to get back to Tier 1, which we're working on assiduously, and we are going to come back to you to ask for the second half of our rise.
I think that's what I'm hearing board members getting at is, does approving these two new sites essentially make it impossible for us not to approve a future enrollment ceiling increase, or can you operate successfully with these two new sites without an enrollment ceiling increase?
We believe that we can because of the way that we have chosen to consistently under budget and stay under budget. We're going to reach a point where that's not going to be possible.
I'm looking at your charter, and maybe I'm looking at an old version, but it shows your enrollment ceiling topping off at 600?
No, our original approved application, if you look at it, had us growing at a rate of, starting at 150 and growing at a rate of 125 a year, up to 1225.
So to clarify, when the school originally applied, I believe in 2012, in their application, they requested a maximum enrollment ceiling of 1225. However, at the time of approval, their approved enrollment ceiling in their charter agreement as it stands today maxes out at 600 students. And that's essentially where they are. And in terms of Ms. Spinner referencing them wanting to get back to Tier 1 status in order to achieve an enrollment ceiling increase in the future, I believe that's a future goal of the school. However, the school's enrollment ceiling is 600 as of today.
We have no expectation that we would not follow the rules. We were the first, in spite of the fact that for 15 years, adult charter schools had existed in this city. We were the first adult charter east of the river, where there is the greatest need. That need continues to grow. We are going to continue to try to find reasonable and equitable ways of addressing that need.
Could you say a few words about the non-growth initiatives in order to continue to strengthen the program that you're offering?
I think that two things help us. Number one, we are looking at programming beyond using our 501c3 status. For example, we have been asked by the Department of Employment Services to do some training for them on a contractual basis that would allow us to continue to feed our reserves and maintain our budget status.
Mm-hmm. And then continuing to develop the existing program serving your...
Absolutely, and backfilling as quickly as we can in those areas that are least costly. For example, we run a 12-hour a day from 9 in the morning until 9 at night, Microsoft Academy. Microsoft certification nationally. There are over 630,000 jobs in this region that require Microsoft certification. We can get a student through one level of the 4 levels of certification in 6 weeks. 24 weeks, we've got somebody out with in employability skills and ready to go to work.
Thank you. Would your Vice Chair like to say anything to add to the conversation?
And our Vice Chair has been with us from the very beginning, so he's probably a great person to say something.
Yes, good evening, board members. We're very excited about the possibility of expanding our program into Hope Village. Anyone who is aware of the demographics of Ward 8 know that we have a substantial percentage of ex-offenders or returning citizens, whichever term you're more comfortable with. And so many times they just don't have the opportunities, particularly when it comes to educational enrichment. And for Hope Village, which has been a halfway house in this community for, oh my Lord, almost 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. For the residents there who are trying to transition back into society and be productive citizens, for them not to be able to leave the facility and not have educational programs puts them at a distinct disadvantage. And this is just such a good program, and we're really excited about it, and I hope the board will be supportive.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions, Steve?
So you all are doing important work with people who are trying to turn their lives around, so thank you. And it sounds like you have an interesting opportunity here to serve people who can't otherwise take advantage of your program. What concerns do you have about this? What worries you about this?
We are very data driven. In fact, one of the things we're going to do is send the board this year's data book, because we've chosen to really look at the context in which we're trying to do this work. Our concerns, even as we start to embark upon this from the very onset, have been, do we know enough about what it takes to work with this population in non-academic ways. I sit in these meetings and I listen to my K-12 counterparts who are in Ward 7 and Ward 8, and I know that the kids that they're talking about, that they have so many challenges, I have their parents. Right now, on Fridays, we do how to use the education system for the parents of those children, because even though we've set up a very public system, we've made it somehow not always easily accessible for them. We teach them how to use the lottery system. We show them how to take the best advantage of what's available, and we teach them that what is closest to you isn't always the best situation for your child, and what you need to know about your child in order to make the best decision about schooling. That's part of what we do that isn't a part of our mission, but is a part of what has to happen if we're going to grow people. I don't know how long we can keep doing stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, when it begins to have a major impact on our ability to sustain ourselves and grow and do the work that we know must be done, we will have to figure out what programmatically has to go. Because at the end of the day, the demographics are changing by leaps and bounds. The very community that you find yourself in today, in the last 10 years, has shifted almost 27%. I facilitated a conversation in this community 8 years ago and convinced them that, gay white men weren't the enemy. African American women who were professionals were the enemy. They were coming into this community in droves, and their tolerance for poverty and for the kinds of things that were happening is very low. So changing their capacity becomes a major thing for us. How much we can do with that is always a question for me and my staff. I don't have any easy answers.
Let me say one thing. I would also like to add that so many times when you're dealing with adult education, and because of the characteristics of the students there, the focus is totally on schooling, and many times there are not many educational enrichment components. I'm pleased to say that the Community College Preparatory Academy now has a partnership with the Anacostia Playhouse, which is, matter of fact, they just won 3 Helen Hayes Awards to provide complimentary tickets for our students, and for so many of them, this is their first exposure to live theater. And we've been doing this for now going into the 2nd year. Not a dime is coming from the school budget, and it's been very, very good. And I think that more programs need to be included in adult education, so that they too can have these other culturally and educationally enriching experiences.
We've been pretty lucky. We've been able to raise a few dollars on the side, thanks to some community partners from the development community, and so that allows us to do some things like emergency transportation until we were able to get the transportation legislation through, and like this kind of enrichment activity that we do sometimes with our students and sometimes with our students and their children.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll be voting on this at the June meeting. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. If we can return to the school notification and then the ECI policy. So Rashida Young, if you would join us. Thank you. start with the school notification.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Rashida Young, and I am a senior manager in the School Performance Department. This is a public hearing for the mandatory school notifications policy, which was opened for public comment on April 23rd. This policy highlights the specific scenarios in which public charter schools must provide notification to the DC Public Charter School Board and the process for doing so. This includes notifications for unscheduled school closings, health and safety crises, key personnel changes, revoked licenses, and legal proceedings. We have not received any public comment. The vote for this policy is scheduled for June 18th.
Any members of the board, any questions or comments? Ricarda and Don as well, if you want to break in by phone.
I have a comment on this. Thank you.
I think I might have asked this at the last meeting, and I hope I'm not being redundant. Have we gotten any clarity from legal on the definition of government investigation or other proceeding?
Sure. I actually think that there was also a comment last time about the revoked authorization or revoked or expired authorization, so we added that note for clarity in the policy. We didn't add a note about government investigation, so we can certainly do so prior to the vote. They've kept it broad. As of now, schools are sending us emails when there's any legal proceeding or investigation against them, but it's piecemeal and it's not consistent. So this leaves it a bit broad. We haven't defined the exact type of investigation. We're asking schools to basically submit any government investigation, but we don't have a definition of it.
Okay. So, okay. Thanks.
Any other reactions, questions? All right, so that'll be voted on at the June meeting. Excellent.
Yeah,
all right. Should we move on to the enrollment ceiling increase policy?
Sure. Okay. So as I mentioned, I am Rashida Young, and with me is Naomi Rubin-DeVoe, Deputy Director. This is the second public hearing for revisions to the enrollment ceiling increase policy, which was open for public comment on March 19th. We revised the policy to clarify standards the board will consider when determining whether a school will be granted an enrollment increase and to ensure the board's practices and the policy are aligned. We sought school leader and community feedback via the Charter Leaders Meeting, 3 School Leader Task Force meetings, and a Parent Alumni Leadership Council meeting. Aside from feedback gathered at those meetings, we also received 6 public comments proposing suggestions and requesting clarity on several topics, including standards for discipline, subgroup performance, budgeted enrollment targets, re-enrollment, financials, the performance management framework tiers, and school turnaround status. In response to public comments, our staff released a second version of the policy on May 7th. Key changes included clarification that indicator number 8 would assess subgroup performance for both approaching expectations as well as being college and career ready, so levels 3 and 4, increasing the amount of time schools have to secure a facility from 24 months to 36 months, increasing the adult ed retention rate criteria from 65% to 75%, adding clarifying language for asset acquisitions, the K through 3rd growth assessment, 1-year MGP and enrollment projections, updating the business rules document, and including specific examples of data that the board may review when doing a deep dive analysis. And the vote on the final policy is scheduled for June 18th.
Naomi, do you have anything to add, or?
No, but I'm happy to respond to any of we're both happy to respond to any of the comments that were raised earlier tonight about the policy.
Great. We definitely want you to do that. Darren, were you going to ask a question?
I think it's a pretty significant shift that we recently made with moving from just the 4 and 5 on the park to adding the approaching expectations, which I think ever since park has come into use, I know this board has talked about that as sort of the ground where you hope to see schools at least approaching proficiency, along with the schools that are doing very well and exceeding it. So can you just give us a little more detail about that expansion of the policy into the level 3 territory? I just think it's worth noting for the record.
So one piece of it is that the standard is still that the school must meet or exceed the city average. So even though we're reviewing or we're looking at schools that are scoring 3+ as well as 4+, we're still holding it to that same standard of meeting or exceeding the city average of other schools. So I think that's important to note. As you know, our performance management framework assesses 3+, so this policy in that way aligns to that. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mimi.
There we go. I think one of the things that was very important for us to consider is a school can have the same percentage of 4+, especially for some other subgroups like special education and EL, and then very different percentages of 3+. So we can have a school that has 80% of their students in 1 or 2, and then 20% at 4. And then we can have another school that has 20% at 4, but then 50% at 3. And we wanted to honor those schools that are moving the students forward and are at 3 and make sure that we're recognizing their work, and especially in some of these subgroups where 4 and 5 is very hard to get to, and we want to definitely have everyone get there, but we also want to expand those schools that are moving them to 3.
Right, and I think that one of the things that I'm particularly pleased about with this proposed policy is we're really moving more aggressively into looking at closing the achievement gap, and I think that a significant step in that direction is acknowledging those schools that may not be where they want to be in terms of a 4 or a 5 on the park, but what you just described, they do have that a larger percentage of students who are approaching proficiency, which I think we want to see them do even better than that, but that's certainly a step in the right direction. So I think it's important not just to put them all in that did not meet the target if in fact a large percentage are at that level 3. So I like that change to the policy.
We should thank Scott Pearson for bringing it up.
Thank you, Scott Pearson.
Oh, we go. Can you address the earlier public comment regarding the, I suppose, rigor of our re-enrollment standard, but also in the context of how many factors a school is able to miss and still be approved for growth?
Sure, I'll start, and then so this is a philosophy, right? So we at PCSB have quite a few frameworks, and we hold all of the schools to the same standard. But what's different, this is the city as well. What's different is funding. So the schools for at-risk students get more money per student. And the point is that they are harder to teach and at times maybe harder to come to school every day. And so the money, therefore, as we heard from Eagle Academy, can be used for getting students to school. This is also our most vulnerable population. The study that was done by OSSI a few years ago has really sat with me, which was the students who are performing by far the worst are not the students at the schools that are, our lowest performing schools. They're the ones that don't stay at the same school. They're bouncing from school to school, and by the time you've hit 3 different schools, your chances of ever getting to level 3, as we were just talking about, or 4, are much less. And so I think it's our responsibility to be expanding schools that are beating the odds and are moving, and are holding students and are keeping them at their school. And I will say that we hear from both sides. We hear from our schools that serve high percentages of more middle income and upper income students that they struggle with the re-enrollment rate for a couple of reasons. One is private school. One is their schools end in 5th grade and parents are shopping for a middle high school and are going to pull them out. So this is a hard bar, and it's a high bar. We stand by it because there is flexibility with it, and we want to be looking at, it still means 20% of the population cannot be re-enrolling, right? We didn't set the bar at 100%, we set it at 85. So 20% is expected that we understand. And I think then to your second point on what it is, we built the policy where you could miss up to two indicators and still be considered. And that we would want to hear the story. So let's say you're at 75%, and let's say it is Eagle Academy and you end in third grade, and they are going to share with us why 85% was not reasonable, and that they will be able to meet a much higher bar if we were to allow them to have a ceiling increase and grow. And that would be something that I think the board should be able to consider and have the flexibility to consider. So that's where we stand.
Other board member questions, concerns? Ricarda and Don, I want to create an opportunity if either one of you have questions for Naomi and Rashida.
None at this time. Thank you, Rick.
Yep, good, thanks.
Naomi, or Rashida, we talked specifically about re-enrollment, but one of the arguments put forth tonight and in some of the task force is what's perceived as a correlation more generally with performance against many indicators and the at-risk rate. So if you could just expand, and sort of you suggested your philosophical and our general philosophical standpoint on that, but if you could just go into a little bit more detail about the work that you've done and our take on that as a staff.
So I think one of the things that Josh Boots points out quite a bit is that there's still quite a large achievement gap in the city, and that we see that most with the at-risk versus those that are not at risk. And we believe that our accountability measures should not be impossible to reach if you serve a high percentage of at-risk students, but they also should be not lowered to the point that we are lowering standards for the students that we as a charter sector were meant to build and to create opportunities that were not available at a time in district schools. And that's all changing, and it's gotten better and better, and I think it's part of the reason that there are more options and quality options is because of the standards that this board has held schools to. So we have plenty of schools that are making the policy. It's not just that the only schools that would be deemed to make the policy by missing one or two indicators in terms of when I say making the policy, but there are schools across all of the city, and so we think that that it is a fair policy, but it is a very high bar. There are very few schools, period, that are at a place where we're recommending for expansion.
And I think to echo what Naomi said earlier, the opportunity for schools to come before the board and tell their story, if there was a school that was showing improvement, and if they felt that part of the reason they were struggling in a certain area was because of their population, regardless of that population, that they could tell that story, and particularly if they're showing improvement, then the board could have flexibility in still granting the ECI. So I think the context of each school's story is important, and I think that could apply to schools that are high at risk or not.
That opportunity is an important facet of the change that we made, and Darren spoke a little bit to this a few minutes ago. Could you offer up an example of what that would look like if a school missed one or two indicators, and we talk about bringing a rationale and allowing a LEA to make its case and tell the story?
Sure. So one of the revisions that we made from the last public hearing to this public hearing was adding a little bit of language in the section of the policy where it describes what the board might review when it does its deeper dive analysis. And so one of those sections says for subgroup analysis, the board may look at other assessment data, so other than PARCC, for example, WIDA, NWEA MAP, or IEP goal mastery. So we're acknowledging that there are other ways that a school can show that it is being successful with its students other than the park. And the school could explain showing its growth in a number of those assessments.
And how would a school know to make that argument in the course of its conversations with staff as they're considering putting forward an ECI request?
Right. So we plan to do this analysis at the end of each year, so schools would know where they stand prior to ever submitting an application, and that could be a conversation that they could have with staff if they know that they have missed one indicator or they've missed two indicators. We would be open to dialogue in terms of what other things might the board look at. We want to be very transparent what the board might review. These are suggestions. It actually says some factors in the policy. Some factors staff may consider. So if a school has factors outside of the assessments that we named, we also named looking at lost instruction time due to suspension rate. Those are the things that we know that we review outside of the other criteria in the policy. If the school had something different, they would be able to bring that to us and say, would the board consider this assessment, or would they consider this piece of evidence? And that's a conversation that we could have and perhaps even bring to you to determine, is this something that you'd be open to should the school submit this application?
So we could also be looking at trend analysis. So let's say they missed it in the last year, and let's say it's attendance rate, and they missed the attendance. Is there attendance one? They missed something, right? And so then then they could say, but look, in the past 3 years, we have improved quite a bit, and we're on the right trajectory. And that this would be something that then staff would be able to validate and share with you. I think one of the things that we should be very clear about is that these would be data that we would be able to validate at a student level, so that we are sure that this is accurate and an accurate reflection of the school, whether it's their academic performance or re-enrollment rates. They may want to choose, for example, re-enrollment rate of some of their subgroups. So maybe their re-enrollment rate isn't 85%, but their re-enrollment rate for homeless students is really high. But they can explain the stories. And sometimes, especially our smaller schools, it's one family with 5 students in the school can make a huge difference. And those are the things we want to have them share, so that we can look at that and say, oh, we understand this one family moved or had something, and that caused an entire, a 2% change in your rates. So that's looking at re-enrollment again. But there are other areas, the financial areas, that we could look at different financial plans where they are, so that we're confident that this is a good decision for them.
And then, if there are no other questions, just one other request for you to just summarize some of the other revisions or clarifications between the last policy and the one that we put forward this evening.
Sure. So some of the public comment that we received via email and through the task force were more for clarification. So some of the things we included in this version of the policy, we clarified that for a school that acquires an LEA through an asset acquisition, that the board may deem them exempt. We clarified that for MGP, we'd be looking at a 1-year MGP, not 2-year, because OSSI publicly reports the 1-year rate. There were questions about the budgeted enrollment, so we clarified that it's based off the final enrollment projection that the LEA and PCSB agree to in advance of the school year, which forms the basis for the quarter 1 payments. And we clarified that we clarified with language to the K through 3 growth assessment that this would only be used in cases where a school doesn't have an MGP, and it's for the all students category, not for specific subgroups. And so there are, in this version, several footnotes and also language added to the business rules for those types of clarifications.
So I know we have some new public comment that was offered up this evening with, I believe, at least one letter that I don't we believe we have yet. So that will be sent to us. We'll have that to take a look at. The process from here with the vote in June, just to sort of clarify.
Sure. So we will take in the public comment. We will have discussions about what, which we are going to suggest to be implemented in the policy and which we don't think should. And we'll do another version of the policy which would be voted on at the June board meeting.
And as we always do with all public comment, we will have a table where we'll have each of the public comment addressed and our response clearly, so that whether we accept it or not and why.
Very good. Well, if there aren't any other comments from the board, we'll wrap that up. Good. We'll come back to that in June. Appreciate all your hard work on this. And again, want to recognize the many LEAs, school leaders, others, including many who testified this evening, who've been such a part of this process over the last, it's probably now 9 months, no longer 6 months. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, a few last issues for public hearing. Maybe Terry and Pete, you can both come up and we'll ask Children's Guild and DC Prep to deal with charter amendments. Let's do Children's Guild first.
Introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne Arbogast, Chief Innovation Officer for the Children's Guild.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Brian Daniels, the principal of the Children's Guild DC Public Charter School.
Good evening. Nakia Nicholson, Chief Academic Officer, Children's Guild Public Charter School.
And once again, I'm Terry Quinn. I work for the school performance department. This is a public hearing to discuss an amendment request submitted by the Children's Guild DC Public Charter School to hold classes at a second facility down the street from its current facility in Ward 5. The site for the school's gym and recreational programming will be located at 2135 Queens Chapel Road Northeast. If approved, Children's Guild will use the proposed site to conduct its physical education and recreational programming. And obviously we have the representatives here to answer any questions you may have.
Good evening. Just wanted to say a few things. As you know, we've struggled with recreational space. We weren't able to work out with Langdon, which is about a mile down the way, both with transportation. The Echo is 10,000 square feet. It's about 200 feet, their back door to our back door. It's not ideal. It's, first of all, shared space, so we can't use it every day of the week, and we're limited in the number of hours. There's also some mitigation that we would have to do to protect their equipment. It's not our first choice. We would much rather use the church next to us, and we're in negotiations with the church. If we can work out the things with the church, we would not consider Echo. However, we're trying to keep our options open, and it would give us space for a multi-purpose room and some recreational activity.
How do you get the students there on a day when it's cold or it's snowing or it's raining?
All right. So the space is literally just about 200 feet from our back door to their back door. So it is, again, not an ideal situation where the kids would have to actually put their coats on to transgress from our building to their building, and we would be required, if it is snowing outside or bad weather, to create safe passage in between our door and the door to the facility.
What has been the response from teachers or staff about this proposed location?
So we have had much discussion with our staff about it. In fact, trying to ideally get their feedback and input about how this would work. They have been very open to the idea, just making sure that we're doing everything in the best interest of our students. We do want a space that they can congregate and have recreational activities. It also will serve as a multi-purpose room for some of our programming. Is a large enough space because we are losing some of our space due to classroom sizes, and which is a great thing. But we would like to use it for multi-purpose opportunities as well, something that we don't have a stage, and that's a great facility for that. We also use that space as a shared space with our church. So we are familiar with it. Our students actually go over there when we have some community event during the Sunday services, and they in turn also, the church NCC uses our facility as well.
Just given Echo Stage's other, what else it is on the weekends, how will you make sure that it's safe and clean for students, and how does that not end up being a staff responsibility for the school?
So that's actually part of the arrangement with Echo. So they have staff on stage. They have staff there while we're there, and they'll also take care of the cleaning. But you did anticipate some of our concerns. Our hours would be limited. They could bump us if they have an event, which is not ideal. So it's hard for us to consider it as an everyday. As a matter of fact, we know we can't use it every day, but it does become a nice auxiliary space. And as I said earlier, if we're able to negotiate the deal with the church, which is literally attached to the building, then there would really be no need for us to use Echo. So we're really just trying to cover our bases.
And what about addressing parent concerns about the cleanliness or the use of that building?
So we have talked with many of our parents around this possibility of the use of the space, and have also had this same dialogue with them around, of course, Echo not being our first choice, and they are being very flexible with us in terms of making sure that we do provide them with their kids and our students with the space to be able to use for recreation indoors, as we will be losing the one space that we use now as our multi-purpose room to expand with classroom space. So they would much rather us use a facility that is that close, as opposed to us putting them on a bus and having to take them to a different space, which is just going to cut into just regular instructional time due to transportation and transition.
Do you anticipate at some point outgrowing your current space in terms of your primary building? Is that, I'm hearing you talk about growth and you're losing certain rooms because of attendance growth. So is there what's the long-term plan?
So we're actually approved to grow to 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th grade. We don't have the space for that, so we're actively seeking another spot. And what we would do is we would actually split the schools, and we're talking about a K to 5 or a K to 6, and then, but Mr. Woodruff, it really kind of depends on how we grow and the space that's available. As you know, having available green space for our youngsters is really a high priority for us. Echo doesn't solve that problem. Right. It just gives us recreational space.
Okay, so there's probably more to come, however this goes. There'll be more developments. Okay, thanks.
Very good. All right. I don't think we have any other further questions. Next month. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Pete Petrin and the DC Prep team.
Emily Lawson, founder and CEO at DC Prep.
Raymond Wheaton, Senior Director of Policy and Community Engagement. Hillary Doffenbach-Tab, Director of Data Analysis and Enrollment.
And good evening, my name is Pete Petrin, data analyst on the academic evaluation team. This is a public hearing to discuss revisions to DC Prep Public Charter Schools mission statement and charter goals and student academic achievement expectations. The school is requesting to adopt a new mission statement and new charter goals. Members from the school's leadership are here to discuss the proposal and answer any questions you may have.
We are ready and glad to be here to answer any questions you have about our proposals tonight. But before we get started, I just wanted to share two important items. First of all, we're excited that we're going to have our first graduation from our Benning Middle campus on June 7th. That's going to be at the ARC, and we welcome your attendance. If you want to come, I can let you know more details. In addition, I wanted to share, which I know I've already shared with Scott, but I wanted to share with all of you officially that our board has selected a new CEO for DC Prep. Her name is Laura Maestas, and she's going to take over in November. She joined us 2 years ago and has served as our Chief Talent Officer, and she's done a fantastic job in that role, and we feel really good about her moving into the CEO role. Once she moves into the CEO role, I will stay on the board at DC Prep so I can help with the transition, make sure that it goes smoothly and successfully. And we're also developing a plan for Laura to get to know more members of our DC Prep community and also the DC Prep charter school community. So hopefully she will have a chance to get to know all of you as well. Thanks.
So we're here today for two reasons. So our mission and our goals. As you have in front of you, I'm sure, is our goal. Our mission essentially is a technical change. For the past several years, we've been using a mission, and we recently learned about a process and a goal to officially change the mission. So we will make sure that we are aligning what our programming is right now to what we have been using. The nuance is essentially leadership programming. In our original mission, 2003, when the school was founded, it was something that was to strive for. We always are pushing towards, but we don't have specific programming for that. So we want to make sure that what we are doing is what is written, so that we are serving our kids and our families well. The second is around our goals. So as we are moving into or finishing up our charter agreement, we want to make sure that we have goals that are setting us up for the next 15 years in a world where we don't know what 2030 is going to look like. So our goals that you have before you are essentially to help mitigate changes based off of either policies that are created in the next 15 years, but also recognizing some of the correlations that we spoke about before in terms of the students that we serve and pushing ourselves to be stronger. And so essentially we're ready to take any questions you may have.
Comments or questions from the board?
I'm just thinking to the earlier conversation we had this evening on re-enrollment challenges, and given that you're a multi-campus LEA, have you had any particular challenges or successes that you'd care to share around re-enrollment?
I think our recent growth has helped us have sort of two lesson learned about additional challenges with re-enrollment. Our Anacostia Elementary campus opened several years ago in a temporary space. And I think a little bit more than anticipated, being in a temporary space did hurt our re-enrollment rate at that campus. For families, that space just wasn't as an attractive and of an option as many of the other facilities that they had available to them. Also, sort of being in a facility for 1 year and then having to transition to another location also impacted families' decisions as well. As we know in this city, buildings are very difficult to acquire. Temporary space is often a reality. And looking towards the next 15 years and potential DC Prep growth, that is an obstacle we anticipate encountering again. Additionally, with DC Prep's growth model, we typically open a campus with 1 grade and then add grades subsequent years. We had many families come to us very excited about having a new school option for some of their younger students in the preschool and pre-K grade levels, and so made the difficult decision to have students at different schools. So one child at a new DC Prep campus and another perhaps at a neighborhood school or where they were before. And the daily sort of challenges those families experience with 2 drop-offs, 2 pickups, different school schedules, forces some of our families to make the difficult decision when they can't have a student their students all at one school because of the grade levels that we're serving and as we grow up. So I think that is one lesson learned that we've encountered about re-enrollment. I don't know if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
Any specific practices, lessons learned to the positive in terms of addressing that re-enrollment challenge?
I can speak a little bit to that. Well, I think a lot of it has been investing in family relationships and really working with families when they come to DC Prep for the first time and helping them understand not only why was this a good choice initially for your family, but why is it worth overcoming those additional struggles that you're facing, and helping them see the long-term benefits of our academic outcomes. We know that students who stay at DC Prep and are enrolled with us for longer periods of time have better outcomes on assessments like PARCC than our students who've been with us 1 or 2 years, and helping to share those kind of perspectives with parents who might not have the big picture in mind, just thinking about kind of the daily challenges, and helping them to make a long-term decision that's going to be the most beneficial for their child, even if short-term it is hard.
Yeah, I would second that. I also think this is not exactly what you asked, but just given the conversations earlier, generally our re-enrollment is correlated with our percentage at risk. If you look across our campuses, there are differences between the campuses, not absolute, but generally that is true. And so it does relate, of course, to the families and their life circumstances as well. But we have definitely found that with work, we are able to continually improve general positive trend with our re-enrollment rate.
But still lower than what you would, I don't even know what the right word is, normally anticipate, or what you would hope or expect.
Than what you would want.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Yes, than what we would all want, for sure.
Steve?
I don't blame you. I'm just on the re-enrollment rate that has been pointed out. The number that you have wouldn't meet, if you met that in and of itself wouldn't meet the bar for the enrollment ceiling increase. And when I look at the suspension rates at your Edgewood campus, which are about half for special ed students, more than a third for economically disadvantaged students, more than a third for males, and more than a quarter for females, you probably wouldn't meet that one either. So you're getting perilously close to not being eligible for an enrollment ceiling increase. So have you considered that as you've...
I think the rates you're citing are from last school year, not this school year. And so...
That's the information I have.
Yeah. So our rates have come down significantly. We've been working to have them come down, and then this year we've taken them down significantly again. And so pretty sure we have no more than 10% of students suspended in any one campus this year.
Great.
And when we have asked you all for data, we don't seem to be an outlier in any of the major dimensions from everything we've heard.
Okay.
So we've made a lot of strides in that regard in terms of suspension rate. In terms of re-enrollment rate, we're definitely not trying to have it be 75%. For us, the charter goals are something that we feel good about in terms of being able to stay open, but they are by no means what we're striving for. And so I would say we would strive to have re-enrollment rates of 90%, 95. I mean, but we also would be really sad if we were doing so many things right, and then in 15 years we lost our charter over, a couple numbers.
My understanding also is that when the numbers are ran, we will be one of the schools that will be considered. And so I think that narrative we're talking about, the improvements that we're making and continuous in terms of making sure we're providing for our families in terms of re-enrollment, other ways of disciplining students, and then also just our continued growth and achievement. And so if we were doing that, which we have no plans to right now, but if we were having a conversation about enrollment ceiling, I think we will use that current data too.
Thank you.
June is when we'll be voting on this.
Along with the entire renewal agreement.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All
right, 3 last items in the public hearing before we turn to our formal agenda, which are with regard to the proposed locations for new charter schools. So Hannah, if you can join us. And do we want to bring everybody up? Okay, we'll start with Digital Pioneers and then North Star, College Preparatory, and then the Family Place. Okay, that's like you don't want to get this far and then fall on the stage.
I think it's on, yes. Hi, my name is Hannah Cousineau, and I am a specialist on the Equity and Fidelity team. This is a public hearing on the proposed facility for Digital Pioneers Academy PCS, also known as DPA PCS. Securing a facility is a condition of receiving full charter approval. DPA PCS intends to locate in the East Washington Heights Baptist Church's education wing, located at 2220 Branch Avenue Southeast. Upon the school meeting all conditions, you will vote to fully approve it to open for school year 18-19. This vote is scheduled to occur on June 18th. Representatives from DPA are here to answer your questions.
Great. Give us the update.
Oh, I cannot believe it's been a year, almost to the date that we were here before you all. So I'm Shay Ashton, the founder and principal of Digital Pioneers, and I'll have my colleague introduce himself.
I'm Nima Farashi, the founding director of operations for Digital Pioneers Academy.
So where do we begin? We're just incredibly excited to be here. I can't believe, like I said, it's been almost an exact year. Our student enrollment is doing incredibly well. We've had over 176 families actually apply to Digital Pioneers Academy, and we have 88 students who are fully enrolled through enrollment verification as of today, with about half of our students coming from Ward 8 and about 40% coming from Ward 7. With our target enrollment being 125, we are incredibly confident that we will meet our enrollment numbers by the end of the month, with about 25 outstanding offers and 12 seats available through the My School DC process. And the last data point I'll share is that we've had actually 34 families apply in the last 2 weeks, with 19 of those 34 being fully enrolled. I know this is about facilities, but our students and our families are incredibly excited, so I would just love to start there. In terms of the facilities, we are just incredibly grateful and excited about the partnership with East Washington Heights Baptist Church. While we are a public school and non-denominational, not religious affiliated, the church has been committed to serving students and families well for over the last 15 years at least in Ward 7 and 8. And so the partnership is really around serving students and families educationally at their education wing, which has been pretty much unoccupied except for during the weekend and Sundays, although it's a very active church. So renovations have begun. It's really only a 6-week project, and renovations have begun through our partnership with MCN, and we expect that the renovations will be done early July, which will allow us to open on time in early August. I think that's it. Anything else? Students, teachers, kids?
Yeah.
Oh, right. So we, the renovations we project are about $500,000. And so this past Friday, we did secure a loan from OSSI that will support the renovations. Probably one of your biggest concerns is that it is a huge investment to bring the space essentially up to code, but also to just make it modern. So we're putting in new lights, new floors. We'll get at least 8 education classrooms out of this space, as well as increased Wi-Fi. And right now, it is a 1-year site with the opportunity to renew for the 2nd year, which, again, we're going to continue to explore all options. Just hearing the previous comments around challenges related to a one-year location. I think those are very real, and so we're just continue to be super engaged with our families, incredibly transparent, and hoping that through constant communication, whether we stay for a second year or move, that they'll come along with us. Okay.
I'm just curious, is that site currently being used for any particular purpose?
Not during the day, but during the weekend for Sunday school.
Okay,
Yep.
Sunday school space.
Exactly.
Okay. And I believe I saw you on television. Is that accurate?
Yes, you saw Team DPA last Monday on Fox 5 and NBC.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
That helped with our enrollment.
I'm saying that partly in jest, but it's great to see our schools that haven't even opened yet getting that degree of attention, because that wasn't always the case. So
Sure.
congratulations on that exposure.
Thank you. Being the first charter middle school in Southeast Washington, D.C., I think helps focus on computer science.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
So 2 questions. One, just given the investment, it would seem that you'd want to stay longer in this location. So if you could talk a little bit about what your future plans are, longer than a year.
Sure.
And then I'm very familiar with that site. It's a beautiful church. It's not close to a metro. And so would like to hear about how, well, I guess it's sort of close to Naylor Road, how you're going to help families around transportation challenges.
Sure. Well, we would definitely love to be there long term. The current space probably couldn't accommodate us for 2 years, and so we are in conversations with the church and with our facilities partners around what it would take for us to be there at least for the life of this charter, specifically middle school. So we are absolutely pursuing all options, but that would require building something additional, creating additional space available. So that is definitely an option, but as always, we're going to continue to explore all options that will allow us to serve students and families east of the Anacostia River. The second question? Public transportation. It's definitely available via bus to the location that you're familiar with. I think the thing that we're incredibly excited about is our partnerships with the local surrounding schools. So the majority of our students are coming from the direct feeder schools that are like one of Ambier's, which is in walking distance, Stanton, which is less than a mile away. And so we've been very, very intentional about establishing those partnerships with schools and the parents, as well as the school leadership, to make sure that students had more easy access to the building. The other thing is that the school does have a pretty healthy parking lot, and so we do expect that there may be some parents who will drive, some will use public transportation, and something we're also very much exploring is having parents work together in terms of travel and, teams of students using public transportation or drop-off.
Does it have a recreational space now?
It does not yet, but we are setting aside parts or putting barricades on certain parts of the parking lot to allow, whether it's for a picnic table or recess, we may put a basketball court up, but we're also really hoping to partner with our partner schools as well, because we have a longer school day and an extended day in the afternoon, that there may be opportunities to use gym space or field space with some of our partner schools.
Have you heard anything, yay or nay, support or not support, from the surrounding community?
Yes, I met one of our neighbors yesterday at Porch Fest, and she could not be more excited to volunteer and to participate and help in any way. I think it is pretty unique that in this partnership with East Washington Heights Baptist Church, that the whole congregation, over 400 members, had to vote on this lease, and not just the idea, but the actual lease, which just goes to the commitment as well as the support for DPA being in partnership with East Washington Heights. So while there are a couple of neighbors we've been, communication with, making sure that it's not disruptive, I would generally say the long history of the church in serving the community, that this just seems to be a continuation of that work, and for the most part has been incredibly supportive.
Given the focus you've placed on building the relationship with the local elementaries, and that's always been a key part of your strategy, even when you were before us last year, can you just share a little bit more about how that has evolved as it's become a reality, and now you're opening in just a few months?
Yeah, I think it's been just incredibly rewarding and very consistent with our belief of serving all kids and all being all. We have really just had conversations around what do students want, what do students need. And I think, honestly, our decision around starting at 6th grade has meant that we've had an open door. And so there's a real strong feeling that in Ward 7 and 8 that we just need more high quality middle school options. And because we are specifically serving a need around computer science, and we are committed to sharing best practices and training and working with students eventually down the road in terms of after-school programs, there really just has been a tremendous open door in terms of the partnership. But specifically, we have taught computer science lessons at all of our partner schools, and I am just incredibly excited about the engagement the students have had. I mean, first of all, they're digital natives. They completely get it. They love the robot, but they're just excited by this idea of creating websites and games and being able to create apps. And in fact, the students have been our recruiting strategy. So by talking with students, by the time that they get home, they're telling their parents to call us, and the parents are saying, my kid just saw the robot and they're excited about your school. And so I think our lesson is, like, you really do have to talk with both where the relationships are strong. So our relationships with the 5th grade teachers has allowed us to make sure that we not just expose the kids, but then really going through the process around enrollment, as well as the relationships with our students, giving them exposure. They have really been harassing their parents to enroll. And then ultimately getting the parents to come to the open houses, to see the space, to see the idea, and actually interact with the robot or our team and staff has been really the deal closer in terms of ensuring our enrollment numbers.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where are you with hiring staff?
Yeah, great question. So I can give you the exact numbers. So our leadership team is almost fully hired. We hired a director of curriculum instruction, our director of operations. We have a special assistant, a director of special projects. We have at least 3 offers for full-time teachers. We had an enrollment event this Saturday, hiring fair this Saturday, where we talked to over 7 teachers. So I'm hoping that number will increase over the next coming weeks. Who else am I missing? Dean of Social Emotional. We have hired our Dean of Social Emotional Learning. We have a finalist for a social worker. So right now, teacher hiring is our top priority, and I'd probably say we're between 4 to 8 kind of range in terms of still needing teachers.
All right.
Okay, we're done. We're out of here.
Thank you. All right, can the North Star team please join us? So it seems to be a requirement that all opening schools have been on television in the last week. So.
Hello again. This is a public hearing on the proposed facility for North Star College Preparatory Academy for Boys, PCS, also known as North Star PCS. Securing a facility is a condition of receiving full charter approval. North Star PCS intends to locate in the Cesar Chavez Public Charter School for Public Policy Parkside campus at 3701 Hayes Street Northeast. Upon the school meeting all conditions, you will vote to fully approve it to open for school year 18-19. This vote is scheduled to occur on June 18th. 2 public comments have been received against the school. The feminist majority opposes its single-sex model, and ANC 7D expresses concern over its engagement with the Commission. Representatives from North Star are here to respond to those public comments as well as to answer your questions.
Great. If you'd maybe start with just the general update and then whatever response to those comments.
So everything that Mache said, ditto. Like, it's been a year, and we are super excited just because of the engagement that we have had with the community about the school. We are, again, going to be co-locating with the Cesar Chavez School of Public Policy for our first year. We are signing a one-year lease with them. We do not know where that will go, but we do know that at the end of that year that the Parkside Middle School is winding down, and so there is some hope that there can be a second year beyond that. Beyond that, we are also working everything that we can on the ground to figure out how we make the school find a permanent home that it will be able to keep after that. We are committed to the Kenilworth Parkside community. With the wind down of the Cesar Chavez Middle School, they have no middle school in that community that they can go to, and parents are not feeling so good about sending kids across the river or across the highway. We are at 42 students who are fully enrolled, on the way to 85. There are another 10 students who are in the process of enrolling. They've started some documentation and need more, and we have 33 seats that are open. We actually got a jump start on staffing because, we did bring in teachers last year who were able to work through the entire planning year with us. So we're in a good place there. We are about to make an offer for a special ed coordinator, and then there are a couple of other positions that we're working through. We have about 5 to 10 teachers that we are currently working through our process with. And this is Nicole. She is my board chair.
Hi, Nicole. Just curious, with the Chavez space, any concerns about the space or any features on the more positive side that you think will work for you or against you?
I think that's an excellent question, because Cesar Chavez offers an opportunity and some challenges that can be opportunities. Part of the public comment that came, or concern that has been coming from the ward that we are in, and the ANC, the commissioners that we have been speaking to, is just a concern about, there is definitely a concern that they feel like we should have been communicating with them more, we should have been doing more engagement with them. We are continuing to work through a very deliberate plan to communicate with everyone in that community. There are probably about 75 people who are gatekeepers, and we've worked through them all. And so we'll continue to communicate with everyone who is in that area. But putting fourth graders in the building with 12th graders has been a concern. There is also the reality of the fact that school is going through transition right now. And so with the middle school winding down and some of the staff who are associated with that middle school leaving, a new principal being named very soon, it's a really difficult place. They also had some newsworthy events in the last couple of weeks that make it a really tough place to be right now. That actually creates an opportunity, though. When a school we've spent quite a bit of time traveling this nation, and we have seen lots of schools successfully co-locate, successfully share. And those schools are very different. They're in very different places. But a school coming in with new energy can bring a stability to a place when it's kind of going through transition. We are partnering with Cesar Chavez. We've made it clear with them, and they've made it clear to us that this is beyond rent. This is beyond rental space. We want to share in programming. We also feel like there is an opportunity. This is a school that focuses on public policy, and their high school students have to meet certain service requirements. They can meet that coming down the hall, right? They can meet that. We also I've had a very long-standing commitment to working with Black and brown males in particular, and trying to increase the number of those individuals who choose to go into education. Part of it is exposure. And so allowing those young men to be able to come over to where we are, tutor with our students, work with our students, fulfill their service requirements, and experience a school on the other side of the hall with a completely different culture creates an opportunity for the teachers who are in that building to share in what we are doing, but also for the students who are in that building to share in it as well. So we do recognize that it is sticky to go into a place when when they're in transition, but that creates an opportunity that we think we're ready to kind of pounce on. Do you really want to ask me a question?
Do I really want to ask this question? Given that enrollment is such a huge driver of your financial sustainability, especially in the first year, how are you thinking about the different scenarios and the recruitment trajectory between now and the start of the school year?
So I want to say a couple of things. One, I have been very confident from the beginning that we were going to enroll straight through summer. I made that clear from the beginning. I know this population. I've worked with this population in many cities. They're the slowest to move, and we are also enrolling students in 4th grade. So we knew we were going to, we don't have natural feeders in the way that most folks do. So we have had to create channels with rec centers and sports programs and intramural programs. We've had to go out on the street. We've had to talk. I am out passing out flyers to families in cars. I was recognized for being on TV by several families who I stopped their car and, stuck flyers in the car. And as we continue to do that, we continue to raise awareness. What I can tell you is that when we run into a family that has a child, a boy, in 3rd grade, they want to put their kid in that school. And the only thing that keeps them from doing it is where they're located and whether or not they can get that child to our school. So we know that as we continue to do the slow and deliberate work of walking this community and talking and going to every meeting and being at every event, that we're going to continue to reach enrollment. At the same time, we created 3 scenarios, that are scenarios that represent contingencies for us. If we don't meet a certain level of enrollment, we're going to have to make these choices. We've already cut the bottom of that first one, so we know we'll be able to keep our staff. I think that's pretty important to the program, but we don't intend to have any of those. We've also tried to do a really good job of bringing resources into the program, especially in those first years when you're short, to make sure that, if we had shortfalls, we could cover it through some of the extra cushion resources that we were building through fundraising. We are still fundraising, so if you have friends, please tell them to call us. And so we think that with the contingency plans that we put in place, as well as the recruitment that we fully intend to do, we intend to recruit through summer. We think we're going to be there. It's going to go slower, and the truth is, I am gearing up my team that this is the work we have to do every year because we have made a commitment to serve 4th graders. We will always be recruiting from a non-channel, so we will have to do this level of recruitment every year.
All right. If we don't have any other questions, we'll be back here a month from now for a final vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Our last matter for our public hearing this evening, which is the Family Place team, if you join us.
Please be careful.
Okay, last but not least, this is a public hearing on the proposed facility for the Family Place Public Charter School. Securing a facility is a condition of receiving full charter approval. The Family Place PCS intends to locate with the Family Place nonprofit at 3309 16th Street Northwest. Upon the school meeting all conditions, you will vote to approve it to fully open for school year 18-19. This vote is scheduled to occur on June 18th. We have received 1 public comment from ANC 1A in support of the school. Representatives from the Family Place are here to provide an update on its facility and answer your questions.
Good evening. My name is Haley Wiggins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Family Place. And I'll let the
Good evening. I'm Michael Barnett. I'm chair of the board of the Family Place Public Charter School.
And good evening. I'm Sean Chakraborty, and I was the former ESL teacher when you visited me, and now I'm secretary on the board.
We have also had a wonderful and challenging year getting the charter school up and ready. But first off, I just want to thank the charter school board staff who has been so helpful in this process and have really helped us help guide us through the process. So we're the Family Place Public Charter School, and as Hannah mentioned, we will be co-locating with, we plan to co-locate with the Family Place nonprofit who has been serving the Columbia Heights area since 1980. With the public charter school, we will have additional resources to be able to serve not only more adult students, but we will be able to provide much more in-depth services to these families. We do have a core set of families. This school year, we've had about 105 students enrolled. We're not yet a public charter school, but we have the ESL classes, Foundations of Literacy classes, and Workforce Development classes going on currently. And we plan each year about 65% of those students we have already expressed interest in continuing for next year, as well as we have quite a few students who came to us in the past, and at the time we were not able to offer more advanced levels of ESL classes, so we have quite a few students who have already expressed wanting to come back once we're able to offer those additional classes. Not sure what other information might be helpful at this point.
I just wanted to add, I wanted to kind of echo the sentiments of our colleagues who are also opening new charter schools, just about how excited we are at the prospect of opening our doors in September and really enhancing, adding to the services that the Family Place has provided for just about 4 decades. We're really excited about expanding our services and with an idea of meeting our students where they're at. So to be able to provide educational services, ESL services for the beginning learner who's just in the sort of the early stages of the English acquisition process, up to those that have a fairly high level of English proficiency but are looking to improve and enhance their English for employability, really with the main interest in acquiring work. And so again, we're excited about continuing what we've been doing for so long, but adding and expanding to those services.
Thank you. Any question?
How many students do you have enrolled currently?
About 105. Well, 105 throughout the year. I think we probably have like around 90, 95 that are still actively enrolled.
And then in terms of renovations, having been to the location last year during your application process, what in the way of renovations or upgrades have needed to be done or will need to be done?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we have not been able to do the basement renovation that we wanted to do before opening. We have put money into our budget for this coming year to be able to do that, but unfortunately, because we haven't gotten startup funding, we have not been able to complete that. What we're in the process of doing is bringing the first level up to ADA code. So there are some minor renovations that are happening now. And we still have the plan to renovate the basement space in this coming year. And just a little note, the contractor who is helping us to do the renovations now, the ADA improvements, as well as quite possibly the larger renovation, came to the Family Place back in the 80s. When he needed support and was a recently arrived immigrant from El Salvador, and now is coming back to help us and has given us a really good reasonable price for these renovations, as he understands that we don't have funding yet. But it's exciting to be working with, some of our history as we embark on this new chapter.
That's great. Does the delay in making the renovations impact enrollment, or will it impact enrollment in any way?
We don't project that it will, because we do have space right now where we can facilitate up to 45 students per session, and we are planning on having 3 different sessions in the day. So a morning, an afternoon, and an evening session. So we still should be able to meet our enrollment targets as is. But we are planning on being able to improve the space that we have, because it is tight.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Otherwise, we will see you all in June.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We now turn to the public meeting, but one last call for any members of the public who want to address any of the public locations that we just discussed. One last time. All right. Do you want to take? Okay. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and then we'll return for the public meeting.
Agenda approved, and we're going to start with first vote on a charter amendment for Apple Tree, and Naomi DeVoe, our Deputy Director, is going to be introducing this.
There we go. All right. Hi. So we recommend, the staff recommends that the board approve Apple Tree Public Charter Schools amendment requests and approve DC PCSB's board chair, Rick Cruz, to sign the amendment on the board's behalf. And to remind you, Apple Tree is requesting to relocate its Parkland School to the ARC at 1801 Mississippi Ave, Southeast in Ward 8. Additionally, and this is why we want to make sure everyone's aware that the school is now going to request to be recognized as two campuses. And this will be a standalone campus separate from the Southeast Douglas Knowles campus, which is not relocating. So if approved, the Southeast campus will be separated into Apple Tree Public Charter School Parklands at the ARC, and then Apple Tree Public Charter School Douglas Knowles will stay where it is. The school staff and board is here if you have any questions.
Great. And Naomi, that was a change precipitated from our conversation at the hearing last
That's
month.
correct. It came up during the public hearing where we realized that there was probably an old reason why we were having it one facility or one campus on two facilities, and that no longer is necessary.
Great. Well, please introduce yourself and then any comments that you have.
Hi, Tony Taylor, Director of Operations and Compliance.
And I'm Tom Keene, General Counsel of Apple Tree, and we are just real excited about this move. We have built this new facility in the ARC, and it is a 4-classroom space that is, to our minds, the ideal early childhood space. We're really excited to be able to move to this new location.
Great. I know we spent a fair bit of time discussing this at the last meeting, but if there are any questions, comments from the board, Ricarda, Don on the phone.
I'll just say it sounded like a great opportunity at the last meeting, so I have nothing more to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Ricarda. All right. This might be a pretty easy, straightforward one. I'm assuming I'm going to get a motion.
I move to approve the charter amendment request of Apple Tree Public Charter School and approve the DC Public Charter School Board Chair to sign the amendment on the board's behalf.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. Any nays? All right. It is approved. Congratulations, gentlemen. All right, now we're going to move to our new charter school applications. So, it's coming up. And we'll start with Bolt Academy. Yes, we're going to do all three at once. Okay. So, Bolt Academy, Capitol Village, and Mecca.
Hi, I'm Melody Sampson, and I'm a senior specialist on the academic evaluation team. Tonight, I am going to ask you to vote on the charter application for Bolt Academy. The Bolt Founding Group proposes opening a college and career-focused high school located in Wards 7 or 8 that will provide students with the opportunity to travel and study abroad. Additionally, Bolt plans to offer a residential program for 100 to 130 of its students to live on campus in family-style dorms. The proposed school's application is available on our website, and we held a public hearing last month.
If you'd like to start, yeah.
I was one of the lead board members on this particular application, so I want to start by congratulating the applicants. This is an example of a fairly innovative, there's a lot of features to this application, approach, particularly in that they want to both locate and serve students in the Ward 7 and Ward 8 areas of the city. And there's a lot of features to the application that would be the first time any of those kinds of features would certainly be present in a school in that part of the city. So kudos to them for coming up with these ideas. Having said that, a concern that I have had since my initial read of the application and through the capacity interview and continuing until now is that given the fragility, I guess I would argue, of the populations that we want to serve, particularly in Ward 7 and 8, and given the numerous innovative features that this particular application is proposing, in order for the school to be successful, it will be critically important for these features to be as well thought out as possible and implemented very effectively. So just to give a few examples, bear with me. The Study Abroad program, it's an opportunity for students to go overseas and engage in coursework and learn about the culture in other places. But at least to my read and my understanding from the interviews that we've done, I would have liked to have seen a more cohesive and thought out study abroad program that could predict more efficiently where the students would be going, how long they would be there. Would it be for a couple of weeks? Would it be for an entire semester? Would it be for a school year? And also, how will the program, probably most importantly, how will the schools program ensure the safety of the students? I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure that it was as well thought through as we would have liked to have seen. Similarly, another feature of the application is to have a residential program where some students can live on the campus of the school, whereas others would treat it as a day school and stay in their respective homes. Again, interesting idea, but I wasn't sure how, I remain unsure how it would be decided which students would be residential, which students would treat it as a day school, and how the services of the school, particularly students in need of social and emotional behavioral supports, would have their needs met if they were in the day school version of it versus the residential and vice versa. So again, a very compelling, again to my read, a very compelling idea, but I found it to be a little not as comprehensively thought through as I would have liked to have seen. And then finally, the curriculum, the education plan, I think we were a little unsure how, and again, I'm thinking particularly of the target population of Ward 7 and Ward 8, how students with special needs would have their needs sufficiently met, how English language learners would have their needs sufficiently met. And I think any one of these issues, the residential piece, the study abroad piece, the curricular piece, would be significant challenges that could perhaps be overcome, whether it was approved with conditions or whether we just focused on the one issue, but the totality of all of those things all at once leave me thinking that it might be to the school's advantage to revisit each of those things and maybe come back and present us with a more thorough exploration of how they would do all three of those things successfully. And the last thing I would want to note is that particularly at the high school level in those parts of the city, we currently have significant under-enrollment at many of both charter and traditional high schools that are in Ward 7 and 8. So I think demonstrating how this school, which has a lot of new features, which is a good thing, but how this school would successfully attract the number of students that it needs to remain viable is another challenge that I think the school needs to address. So for all of those reasons, at least right now, I'm not in support of approval of the application.
Thank you, Darren. Steve?
So I'm a huge proponent of abroad programs, especially for low-income students. Actually, first time I went on an airplane was to go to my abroad program in Madrid, Spain, my junior year of college. My children, for the last 11 years, have attended a dual language immersion school where the capstone experiences are abroad programs. So I feel very strongly about this. So I was surprised in your application to see that there weren't any target countries. And the reason I was surprised is because in my own experience and in watching my children's schools over the last 11 years, much of the curriculum, much of the thrust of the school is actually familiarizing the students with the countries that they're going to attend school and live in. So I was surprised to see that was missing from your application. Also, unless it's an English-speaking country, there's going to be a language component here. And when I asked you all about that in the last meeting, you said that the language instruction might take place online. Again, this is such a central element of a school that is going to send students abroad. I was surprised that that wasn't woven more deeply into your application. And then I understand why you would have students living in a dorm, because it's just so much easier to monitor them, and it's just easier logistically. But it just seems to me that I'm going to take kids from DC and take them to the other side of the world. It's a real missed opportunity to have them living with other kids from DC. The family experience is really a central component of an abroad program. So I know you all have worked very, very hard on this application, and I wanted to be specific and clear about what my concerns were. I felt you all were owed that.
Board members Don or Ricarda, give you an opportunity to weigh in.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate and resonate points that have been raised by staff in the memo and by colleagues. The concept here is a powerful one, and the city and the country needs to have a school like this that serves the student population that this school sets out to serve. I would agree with what Steve and Darren have said, just in the sense really that there are challenges that need to be fleshed out that I think this group is fully capable of taking and running with and fixing and bolstering to the point of this board satisfaction. But I think that they're too significant and too great challenges to address through an approval and a condition, working through conditions. I think these are sort of foundational questions that this group, with a little bit more time, I very much hope that they work these out, and they'll get a letter from us detailing some of them and some of what Steve and Darren have mentioned. But and that's really my hope, because I really applaud the group on a powerful concept for school. I just think that the details are not there that this board needs to approve the school under the terms that we're required to.
Great, thank you, Don. Anyone else have anything to add?
Rick, it's Ricarda. I would just really echo the sentiment of the appreciation for bringing forward such an innovative concept to DC. I'm really excited about the possibility of this school moving forward in the future. I also agree that there are structural elements and details that really must be resolved before I could approve this. But I am really hopeful that the team will continue to move it forward and that we can take a look again next year.
Thank you, Ricarda. I'll just add, and Steve touched upon how transformative an experience like the one that the school has proposed can be and has been for students who can take advantage of it. And that unfortunately not as many students in our city can. So the core objective of the school is one that deeply, deeply resonates with me. I'd broadly say I agree with many of the comments made and the concerns about both in meeting our threshold for approval, but specifically the detail that would allow us to move forward at this point. But I too would signal that should it not be approved this go around, that you come back to us with a proposal that addresses what I know will be several items that we detail, not just in this panel or at this dais, but in terms of specific feedback that we've given you.
And I'll just add finally, and I support many of the comments that my colleagues on the board have made already. The ambitious nature of the application is very exciting to all of us. Unfortunately, with ambition comes a lot of need for very clear specificity on some of the plans that you would need to do, especially on, as I asked during the hearing, around supporting students with special needs abroad, supporting EL learners abroad. I mean, those are just really hard, crucial questions, and I appreciate that we got some follow-up on some of those. But I think just given and a residential program, these are all just very, very ambitious facets of your application, and they just require a lot of technicality and clear answers for us before we can move forward.
So if there aren't additional comments, I'd then ask for a motion.
Okay, excuse me, I move to deny the charter application for Boat Academy.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor of the motion on the table? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. The motion for denial moves forward. Thank you. Next, Capitol Village Academy.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Noth, and I am a senior specialist on the School Quality and Accountability team. Tonight, I am asking you to vote on the charter application of Capitol Village, a small, diverse, expeditionary learning middle school serving no more than 150 students at capacity in grades 5 through 8. The school's mission is to prepare all students, regardless of background or circumstance, to reach their full potential in college, career, and life in order to become agents of change in their communities. The school wants to be centrally located near a metro that will attract a diverse population. The application is available on our website, and we held a public hearing last month.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. So I was one of the lead board members on the application process, so I'll start us off. I think Alyssa's comments touched upon many of the reasons why I have been enthusiastic about the application. A micro school, diverse by design, very personalized in its approach, both in terms of adults and in terms of technology and expeditionary learning. I think both the innovativeness and the combination of resources and approaches is incredibly powerful. The demand also, I think, struck me. It is, if you look at those different components and the schools in our city that have some of the most enthusiastic parents and communities and the longest wait list represent many of those factors and criteria. That said, as I spent more time with the application, there were many things that I feel need to be fleshed out further, both in terms of the instructional capacity, which we talk about, and being able to sufficiently and appropriately serve all the populations that we would anticipate serving at the school, our ability to both address those populations and do so in a way that fits with some of the constraints imposed by being a small micro school, which are the budget constraints. So I think I'd be remiss in not acknowledging my concern around the budget's ability to address at this point the instructional and technology investments that we would anticipate needing to be made, and more generally not having the margin for error in being able to
adjust across the year. So for those reasons, I myself will be voting in favor of denying the charter moving forward, but I would ask my board members to chime in as well.
So I really like this application. I thought that the school leader seemed informed and prepared about the instructional model and logistics behind the school. I agreed with much of our staff's critique of the school. To me, it feels like these are issues that could be worked out before launch. I understand there are complications to this, but it's such a different model. It's the sort of thing that people in this sector have been wrestling with for years, and it was the best summary of how to do this type of instructional model that I've heard in a long time. So for me, I would be willing to take a risk on the very real challenges that the staff illuminated in their critique.
As my previous two colleagues said, I'm a big fan of this particular application, and I thought the proposed executive director did a very strong job of presenting the idea of the school. I do think as a micro program, there are some built-in constraints that I, for one, would want to see more specifically addressed because due to the small size and therefore relatively small budget, any challenges or ripples or errors in terms of bringing on staff, whether it's special education or instructional leads or the folks that are going to focus on the expeditionary learning or any of those positions, in my view, are going to be critical to make sure you get the absolute best person all the way down to paraprofessionals, because you're going to have such a small, relatively small number of staff. And I think that right now what I saw was a very strong idea and a very well-written application. However, I have less information to wrap my head around who exactly are you going to get to take some of the key positions. What expertise will they be bringing, and what confidence do we have that you'll be able to hit the ground running the first week of school or the first months of school, and not be trying to recover from challenges related to that. And I think that that's not always an area that we focus on with schools that we approve or not approve. But again, because of the small size, I'm looking for a little bit more than just the executive director, who clearly is qualified and has done an exemplary job so far. But I'm looking for a little bit more than that to give me confidence that if approved, this will be a strong, high-performing school from the very beginning. So while I won't be supporting the application tonight for approval, this is certainly one that I hope comes back to us with more detail on the areas that we will be highlighting as just needing more information.
I want to echo my colleagues' sentiments and specifically Steve's sentiments around my willingness, and if there were another way to couch this with a 2-year runway, that I would be unequivocally in support of this application. This being my first round of application, the process on the board, I found this very thorough. I was very excited about reading through it, understanding it, and reading through your clarification and feedback for the questions that were posed. This has also challenged me to think, along with my board members and the staff, of how we continue to work with applicants on their process. So equally would be willing to take a risk if we had the ability to have a longer runway for you to work through some of these questions and concerns.
I echo my colleagues' excitement about this proposal. This is the exact kind of school that I joined the board to try to approve. Diverse by design, exponentiary learning, the micro school idea, these are all just really exciting, great ideas, and I think that your leader has thought a lot about how to make this school successful. At the same time, I think there, as my colleague Mr. Woodruff said, there's just some holes right now in the application that I think need more time to be filled. For example, the blended learning platform, working out the teacher-to-student ratio, like these are all very crucial pieces, and I think your commitment to serving all students means, rightfully so, that you're going to have challenges in making such a excellent model come to fruition, and so I think it's just going to take a little bit more time. I would just impress upon you that we have asked schools in the past to take more time and asked them to reapply, and those schools have come back, been granted a charter, and have been successful. And so when you hear several members of the board saying that, that is a very encouraging statement that we believe that this actually one day could be a very successful school model.
Ricarda and Don, any comments at this time?
Thanks, Rick. Saba, I think that was particularly well said, and I agree with you. I would clarify that the nature of the concerns that I have are financial and operational, and therefore I don't think that the conditional process is the appropriate one to work those out. I think that there are times where the challenges can be resolved through conditions, but because and particularly, I have so much admiration for standing up a micro school to serve our student population in the charter school context. That said, the fact that it is a micro school and the fact that in the opening years it starts with such a small student population, that it really leaves very, very little room for error, for adjustment in the budget, and for some of the instructional aspects of operations, particularly those that concern special needs kids, and just the very heavy lift that this particular very impressive model requires of the teachers and the instructional staff throughout. So because those are financial and operational questions, it's my feeling that they're not appropriate uses of the conditions process, so I am going to vote no, but I'm so grateful to the founders and to the leaders of the school, and I really hope that we can work through all of this with them and see them come back and open for our students in the future.
Thank you, Don. Ricarda?
I have only just a few additional comments. And again, I really appreciate the middle school, micro school concept. We need more quality middle schools for the kids of DC, and this is really an innovative approach to bring forth. I was most concerned about two really areas, and that is kind of the integration between the different curriculum areas where you're working with the pods and the 40 students and how these different topic areas were going to fit together. And I think that needs to be fleshed out, as well as the financial constraints of operating such a small school. That's probably the biggest concern that I would have as well. And so for that reason, I would like to see a little bit more time to continue to really build this out and get just a little bit more structure around that. And so we'll be voting no today.
Thank you, Ricarda. Before I ask for a motion, let me just add one other bit of context. I think we had the pleasure this evening of hearing from several schools who were approved a year ago this time, and some of the challenges that they worked through this year, specifically around facilities and
teacher recruitment and staffing, which they're continuing to work on, as well as student recruitment, although they're all optimistic. And I think as we look down the path of this next year, in the year that one has, that seems like a lot to tackle, in addition to continued refinements to the financial and operating model and some of the curricular approaches, which is why I don't think, again, I can vote to approve, but I will echo what I think all of our board members have said now, which is we would very much like you to come before us again next year, Capitol Village, and hope that you'll be in a position and are both hopeful and enthusiastic about being in a position to vote for you to move forward next year. So with that, unless we have additional comments, I'll ask for a motion from one of my board members.
I move to deny the charter application for Capitol Village.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion on the table? Aye.
Aye.
Naomi Shelton, opposed? Scott?
Nay.
Steve, opposed? Nay. Ricarda and Don?
Support the motion.
Support the motion.
All right, so the motion to deny the charter application for Capitol Village passes 5-2. Thank you, and again, I hope both of our applications at this point take both the feedback the way it was intended, and also our hopes for how you move forward. We have one more application this evening.
Good evening. My name is Rashida Tyler. I'm a senior school performance advisor in the school performance department. Tonight I'm asking you to vote on the charter application of the Mecca Business Learning Institute, or MBLI. The MBLI founding group is proposing to open a middle and high school focused on financial literacy for students in Wards 7 and 8. The proposed mission is to educate middle through high school students on the fundamental theories and practices of global business, with a focus on financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and leadership in an innovative, academically rigorous, engaging school setting. The proposed school's application is available on our website. We held a public hearing on the application last month.
Thank you. So I was one of the board members who took the lead on this application, and I first just want to thank and congratulate the founding board team for the work you put into this application. I think it's a very exciting idea. Entrepreneurship, business, financial literacy, the focus on high business use languages are all things that we all know are needed for students to succeed in the global economy. At the same time, there were concerns with your application that I had that I do not believe will be addressed by conditions. Probably first and foremost was the concern around demand and community involvement. This is a very aggressive population. Our enrollment goal that the school had, it would have one of the highest populations of students in Ward 7 or 8 if the charter was granted, and that would require a lot of demand. And unfortunately, I just did not hear the evidence that that demand was there. And just to give some context to that, we had schools last year, for example, that taught sample lessons at schools that they thought they would recruit from, and therefore were able to have students come and say, I know I'd want to go to this school if you were to grant the charter, or had letters of support from community members. And that's just the kind of evidence that we need to know that a school is going to be able to actually attract students. The other concerns were around really the financial expectations and the focus on getting money from, frankly, from student and families. That dependency on those revenues, I think, was concerning to us, given the population of students that would be served by this school. And finally, just the academic program overall. This was forecasting to be a very high-performing high school. We would like to see, therefore, a high-performing academic program, including advanced placement classes, a wide variety of skills being stressed within the school. And while we saw that on the business and financial management side, we just didn't see that same focus for the other fundamentals of learning. For those reasons, I do not think that I can support this application at this time, but again, believe that the ideas here are very good and would like to see them more fully fleshed out, and especially more time given to working within the community to drive up the demand or to educate the community on what this school could do.
Thank you, Saba.
Thank you, Saba. I think she covered a lot of the primary concerns. For me, I think the primary area of concern that I have for this application is the student size. Earlier this evening, with the schools, two of the schools that were approved to open this coming fall, what they have, one is all boys and the other is a focus on computer science, but what they have in common is that they both intend to open east of the river in Ward 7, I believe, in both cases. And one school's current enrollment is 88, I believe they said, and the other one was 42. And this application proposes to start with 450 sixth grade students. That just strikes me as a wildly overly ambitious number. That's probably the largest starting number, if it actually was pulled off, of literally any school I've dealt with in my more years than I care to say on this board. So I'm just not sure where that number came from, and if it's a realistic thing to expect, given the many charter schools we have in both Ward 7 and Ward 8. And then the intention is to grow that through only sixth grade, or at least primarily sixth grade enrollment, up to almost 1,000 students. So that, again, I have a hard time getting my head around that. And I think while the ideas for the school and financial literacy is certainly a very necessary and hot topic right now for schools to be looking at, I think sort of going back and reviewing what would be practical in terms of numbers would be a good suggestion for this application. So I'm not going to support the application.
Ricardo or Don, any comments?
Sure. Again, I really like the concept of the focus on financial literacy. I do think it's one of those skills that everyone needs to have, and we recognize that more and more as we're adults. I shared the concerns about the predicted size of the school upon opening, as well as the exchange of money in the school. I thought that there was still quite a bit of structure that needed to go around that and detail to really lay that out. So for that reason, I wanted to, I will not vote in support of this application tonight.
Yeah. Thanks. I don't have anything to add, except I very much appreciate all the hard work of the proposal team and my colleagues and staff in reviewing it, and hope that in the future that we can see this application address the challenges and concerns that have been so pertinently raised.
Great. All right. Well, if there aren't any additional comments, can I get a motion for Mecca?
I move to deny the charter application for Mentoring by Example College and Career Academy Business Learning Institute.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any, Ricardo, Don?
Aye.
In favor.
Any nays? All right. The motion to deny moves forward. Thank you. And as we come to the close of the new charter applications, I just want to emphasize again our thanks to everyone who put forward an application. The energy, the effort, the passion, your engagement with us, the community engagement that many of you did, very much appreciated. Next steps in terms of what each of these applicants will get. Someone?
We'll be sharing an official decision letter with the schools, and I believe Katie, the manager who's been working with the applicants, will be setting up one-on-one meetings for feedback.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to the three of you as well. All right, next issue before the board, Rashida Young and Goodwill Academy.
Hello again. I'd first like to welcome members from Goodwill Excel Center Public Charter School and allow them to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Catherine Malloy, President and CEO of Goodwill Excel Center.
Hello, I'm Colleen Paletta. I'm Chief Mission Services Officer for the Goodwill Excel Center.
Thank you.
Our staff requests that you vote to lift the truancy notice of concern, which was issued to Goodwill Excel Public Charter School on March 19th. Per our truancy policy, the school has met 2 out of the 3 criteria required to have the notice lifted. They increased the in-seat attendance rate for the whole school from 55 to 57%, and they maintained a chronic truancy rate of 43%, which is lower than the alternative school threshold of 45%, excluding students already counted as truant in the baseline period. The school is prepared to answer your questions.
Opening statement, thoughts?
No, I mean, happy to answer any specific questions. We've spent a lot of the last 2 months really focused on understanding the reasons behind our issue, putting into action some of the plans that we came last time communicating to you that we would do, and are happy that we've seen improvements in 2 of the 3. And some of our plans are actually, they're coming to fruition. This is an issue that doesn't end today because we met 2 of the 3. It's an issue we will continue to pay very close and careful attention to moving forward.
Is there anything in particular, and I'm thinking more because this is such a common issue for a lot of schools. So having gone through this process to this point, is there anything you would point towards as being particularly effective so far or helpful with the issue?
So I think I would break it down into 3 areas of activity that we were focused on and will continue to be. One is just on data tracking and quality assurance around data analysis. In the last 2 months, we've hired a full-time data manager who is uber focused on not just looking at our practices from a data tracking standpoint, but helping us go deeper and diver and earlier into the analysis. So data management and oversight is critical. Secondly, engaging parents earlier on. We just had an orientation today for our term 5, and new enrollment today, but an orientation last week where we had greater guardian and or parent participation than we did past. So we're prioritizing that. And then thirdly, really working to engage more external partners more thoughtfully. In the last 2 months, we've done a deeper dive relationship with the Aussie Re-Engagement Center. Many of our students have a relationship there, and also they also have contact with a lot of our students. So they were actually on site for our most previous enrollment this past week. So those 3 areas are kind of top of mind.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I had the opportunity to visit not too long ago, so after this, so I appreciate both the tour and the conversation and getting to meet some of your new board members, and also to talk more about some of the things that you put in place. Thank you for that.
Open invitation anytime.
All right. Well, if there isn't more, get a motion.
I'll do the motion.
I move to lift the truancy notice of concern for Goodwill Excel Center PCS, which was given to the school on March 19th, 2018.
And a second?
A second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Ricardo and Don? With the mute button off?
Yep, aye.
Thank you. Don?
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, that's unanimous aye. No, any nays? Going once? All right, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Rashida, you're staying with us. Do we have Ingenuity Prep folks with us there? There we go.
Okay, hello again. I'd first like to welcome members from Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School and allow them to introduce themselves.
I'm Aaron Cuney, CEO.
I'm Will Stetzer, the Chief Operating Officer.
Peter Winnick, Board Chair.
Thank you. Our staff requests that you vote to issue a notice of concern to Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School for its truancy rate of 36.7%, which surpasses the threshold of our board's truancy policy, which is 30% for elementary and middle schools. If the board votes to issue the notice of concern, we recommend the notice be lifted at the June 2018 board meeting, pending improvement in 2 out of the 3 criteria explained in our policy. The school is prepared to answer your questions.
Give you a chance to make a statement.
I do have a prepared statement, but given the time of the evening, I'm happy to defer to you all on whether you'd like me to share that, or we can also just respond to questions, whatever you'd prefer.
Why don't you share it with us?
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. We opened our doors in 2013 with a commitment to providing a quality school for kids and families who didn't have one in their neighborhood, and now is one of the highest performing schools in Southeast DC and the highest performing LEA serving Ward 7 and 8 that the PCSB has approved in the past 10 years. We're proud of the work we're striving to do to create a great option for our families. This spring, we've had some of our strongest new and re-enrollment rates to date, an affirmation of families' increasing support for our work. However, as a school community in partnership with our families, we have a long way to go to set all of our students up to succeed in college and beyond as impactful civic leaders, which is the commitment we've made in our mission. One area of growth important to our achievement of this mission is improved attendance rates. The current state of our attendance and truancy rates fall short of what we expect and what we know we're capable of. There are several drivers of the challenges we've encountered this year. As an organization, as we've grown, we have not sufficiently restructured organizational responsibility for communication, intervention, and support of those families who struggled the most with attendance. This fall, we parted with a staff member who is responsible for overseeing much of our attendance programming. We've also removed a policy over the past couple of years that's actually had a positive impact on our attendance rates, but we've removed this policy in the name of what we felt like was equitable practice for kids and families. Also, as you're aware, truancy rates are impacted by schools' different internal policies on excusing absences, and we've chosen to continue to maintain a high and reliable benchmark for the quantity of absences that we have allowed as excused, even though loosening this internal policy would actually automatically lead us to have lower truancy rates. So despite some of these challenges, we've worked really hard this year to support strong attendance. We've made daily attendance calls for all absent students. We've had weekly attendance meetings that are focused on everything from reviewing truancy data to action planning for and coordinating attendance-related events. We've done a range of things for 2 attendance awareness a month. We've had a monthly attendance club. We've tried a range of strategies to support families, particularly during the winter time when we've seen our attendance rates most impacted, including additional communication. We've offered hot chocolate for families that are arriving on time. We've transitioned much of our attendance data to a new system, Tableau, to provide for even more user-friendly analysis to support our work on that front. We've offered Metro cards for students and families that are homeless and made many referrals to our social worker for some of the families who have struggled on this front. So as we look to next year, we believe that improvements on this front are possible while still maintaining our own high internal benchmarks for excused absences. Heading into next year, we're planning to add additional staff capacity to oversee the data and help us further coordinate implementation of attendance interventions. To one of the challenges named above, we're doing some restructuring of responsibilities to place more ownership on those closest to kids and families versus the more centralized ownership of this work that has been the case recently. We're planning additional collaboration with families to identify high leverage attendance incentives, and we'll be working to improve systems for communicating attendance with families, aligned with some of the research of Todd Rogers at Harvard. So in closing, I think while we have much to be proud of, we recognize there's still some really important areas of improvement for us on this front as an organization, and we're committed to doing the work necessary to make that improvement.
Thank you.
I guess I would ask, given everything that you described, what sort of echoes what Goodwill Academy mentioned that they're doing and has helped with their truancy challenges, obviously a different student population, but what would you say is at the root of the challenges around truancy in spite of all the very strong sounding things that you're already doing?
So, I think for the things that are most immediately within our locus of control, I think the things that are at the root of what we can do better is improving communication with some of the families who are struggling the most, and making sure that communication is happening with the folks in the organization who have the closest relationships with families. And so for us this year, more of that communication has come from like central operations staff, essentially. And I think what we believe will lead to better results as we look to next year is actually leveraging our teachers and our academy leaders who have more face-to-face time with families and deeper relationships, and really trying to better leverage those relationships to provide support and also communicate urgency. We actually saw a couple of weeks ago during our park testing week, we saw that in our 3rd and 4th grade, the 2 grades that had testing, really strong attendance levels at rates that we had not seen prior to that for a while. And so that for me affirms that stronger attendance rates when the urgency is right and when the level of investment is right on the part of our families are possible. And so I think we just need to work in partnership to find a way to create that same level of urgency and investment throughout the year, not just during our park testing weeks.
Okay.
Given the time of the year, Ren, I see the note here around the usual 2-month period for review will actually be more like six weeks. So
Right.
Explain to me how we're going to evaluate this.
Right. So it's our recommendation that since they won't have a full 2 months to show that improvement, that the board have flexibility after seeing what the numbers are after I think by that time it will probably have been 6 weeks from the time of notification to the time of the next board meeting, in determining whether if they were close on one of them, if they met one, were close on one, but basically just not having as stringent the criteria of the 2 out of the 3, since they won't have had as much time to show that improvement.
Okay. So it would be coming back at the next board meeting too.
Right, and we'll follow up with the school as we get closer, just to see where we are in those 3 areas, in the 3 criteria. But just having a little bit more of a dialogue to determine whether the board would be prepared to lift it in June.
All right. Ricardo and Don, I'll assume that silence is that you don't have any questions on this.
Correct.
Great. So then, no more questions. Can I get a motion?
I move to issue a notice of concern to Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School for surpassing the truancy threshold in DC PCSB's truancy policy.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don and Ricardo?
Aye.
Okay. And any nays? No. Motion passes. We will likely see you back here next month. Thank you. All right. Our Deputy Director, Naomi Rubin-DeVoe, and the Sustainable Futures representatives.
Just the 2 of you. All right. Well, good evening again. I'm here with members of Sustainable Futures Public Charter School, and maybe you should introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Paul Jackson. I'm the board chair of Sustainable Futures Public Charter School. Hello.
Hi again, everyone. Janelle Brown, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, serving as the Interim Executive Director.
All right. I'm here to ask the board to issue an instance of fiscal mismanagement as the school has failed to maintain its not-for-profit status. The school has undergone, in addition to losing its 501c3 status, the school has undergone a challenging year fraught with leadership changes, including the loss of its founder and executive director, Natasha Warsaw, and its founding board chair. We have many questions and concerns about the school's stability, given the leadership changes, as well as its economic viability. To that end, we have hired Stone Turn to investigate the school's current and future financial standing. Through this process, we have learned that the school must serve a minimum of 50 students next year to pay back its debts and remain economically viable. As of today, from what I understand, the last I heard, the school has 0 students have enrolled in the school for next year. That means finish all of their paperwork. DC PCSB staff has been visiting the school on a weekly basis since March and has documented our observations. Fewer than 20 students attend the school each day with minimal evidence of instruction occurring. And we are very concerned about the school, and we expect the board has many questions, and we, along with the school leadership, are prepared to answer these questions. I'll sort of start there and then you can ask more questions. We have a lot of documents to talk through, but it might be better as a give and take.
Great. Would you all like to make a statement in response to Deputy Director's thoughts?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. Again, it's my pleasure to represent Sustainable Futures. No question we've had some challenges. No question that we serve a high-need, high-risk population. And, we are here to address those very serious concerns and to let you know that we have folks that have seen those challenges and that are committed to making the commitment to turn the ship on the right path.
I guess for me, my primary question is, since we're approaching the end of this school year, going into the summer, how much confidence do you have that you will be able to continue and be viable moving into the next school year?
Yeah.
Do you have any tangible evidence of being able to move forward?
Sure. I'd love to lean on our financial consultants at Ops, and they have some information on where we are financially. We have run some numbers, and we have put together a budget that we're optimistic that is not showing a deficit, and it will put us in a financially positive situation. Again, we do realize we have some challenges ahead of us, but we are very confident that we are financially in place to do so, and are partnering very closely with your financial folks. Opening up our books and making ourselves 100% available to you all.
Who will be leading the school next year?
Right, we are currently engaged with Ms. Brown here, and she is our interim executive director. The board of directors is also engaging a search for a permanent full-time executive director, and we're in the process of that now.
So, and Ms. Brown, how long will you be serving in your position?
As Paul stated, as the executive director is installed, that will end my interim tenure.
And who is leading the effort on enrollment right now?
So Mr. Jackson has alluded to having a consultant that is going to support the in-school staff. There is a split between the data manager and the director of finance and operations, with myself leading both the recruitment and retention work on one end and then the actual enrollment work on the other. As you all know, enrollment is a multifaceted, multi-step approach requiring a lot of residency verification, medical forms, and things of that nature. And so the team within the building is working to ensure students have those documents and are able to present them as fully enrolled.
Who's leading the outreach and the recruitment?
The Director of Finance and Operations, Ms. Lauren Bryant.
And how many students do you now have fully enrolled at the school for next year?
The fully enrolled is in progress, so there are no current students fully enrolled for next year. The students that are consistently attending are in the enrollment pipeline to provide that residency verification, the medical and dental forms, which are the biggest pieces, moving students to that level 3 and level 4 enrollment.
And how many students would you use the term consistently attending? How many students are consistently attending?
23 to 27.
So I'd like to bring the board's attention to data that we have from the school on their attendance. One of the things that Mr. Jackson said to us was that their attendance rate was closer to 50, maybe 53%. And the data that we get from OSSE that the school provides to us does indeed show these attendance rates. However, when we visit the school, we have never seen the same numbers that they're actually putting into their attendance. So, for example, on March 15th, 2018, their attendance to OSSE was 24 students, and we observed 17. The next day, their attendance was 17 students, and we observed 11. We go for a snapshot for one day, so maybe you want to sort of explain why we are observing fewer bodies in the school than your attendance rate that you are submitting to OSSE, so we can understand how these rates are different. That would be helpful. And here's the data if you wanted to look.
Sure. Janelle.
One reason could be the timing in which the PCSB pop-up visits do take place. Our school day is from 9:30 to 4:15. There have been instances where we had someone come at 9 and we'll be like, the students aren't here yet, but you're welcome to hang out, have a breakfast. So there's that piece that has happened on a couple of occasions. Other times, there may be times where the students are in some of our group therapy sessions with their Mary Center behavior therapists, working with the special education coordinator, or in our spirit room, which has been a blessing and a curse with our facility. Sometimes students receiving student support services end up on the other side of the building across the gym. And so they may not be seen in the actual academic classrooms when that visitor comes in. The visits usually last anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes.
Naomi, do you know if the visitors are also checking the spirit room?
I don't believe that we've been informed of a spirit room. We do check the room that it has where the inclusion or the pull-out room has been. There are 3 rooms we were told to look at, and those are the 3 rooms that we have been visiting. This is the first that I'm hearing of a spirit room or another area where we should look for students. But, and I don't think that, our staff is well aware of the time that the school starts and ends, and we do come at a time when there are students who are supposed to be attending class.
Yeah, I mean, for example, on May 3rd, you reported 21 students present, and we counted 7. Do you think that 14 were in the spirit room?
I would have to look at May 3rd specifically. I would have to look at the calendar to see what other events were going on to confirm that.
So I direct this to you, Mr. Jackson. So this is just year 1. You've lost your founder, about to lose another ED, you lost your board chair, lost board members, you've lost 501c3 status. You've got a third of your projected student enrollment population enrolled. How are you going to open up next year? Like, what's your plan to turn this around? This feels pretty bad.
Addressing each and every one of those concerns. And first and foremost, we have, upon realizing that we were in the situation that we're in, we moved as quickly as we possibly could to rectify those. Now, it's no question that the way in which we enroll folks is a little different than other schools, and that our pipeline isn't going to be as reflective as it will hopefully show for our in-seat attendance for the next year's start. But we're committed to putting folks in position, and Janelle's been here with us in interim executive director capacity since the beginning of the organization. Now is stepping up in interim capacity, and we're working as diligently as we can to provide sustainable futures for our youth.
But who is we at this point? I mean, the team that we saw here a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
And we understand that the students at this school are extremely vulnerable, but pretty much every point that I just ticked off has nothing to do with students. It has to do with the people running the school. So I still don't understand how you're going to turn this around between now and September and open up and maintain a school that serves an incredibly vulnerable population. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know who is going to be around aside from you.
Yeah. Well, again, we are actively and engaging and expanding our board of directors. We are fixing our governance issues. We are addressing our attendance concerns. We are aggressively looking to put folks in seats, and we are ready to engage in a very, very high energy re-enrollment and recruitment over the summertime. And, again, you have painted a picture that we are vividly aware of, and my only goal is to be able to provide a sustainable future for these youth and to be able to do everything within our power to rectify the wrongs that have clearly been identified, and for us to allow us, again, we're in year 1, and we are, to your point, serving a tremendously vulnerable constituency. And so for me, it is about dotting the I's and crossing the T's and making sure that that we are in a position to move forward. And again, in partnership with the financial folks that are working with and looking at our books, in partnership with EdOps, our financial consultants, and with our existing operations team, we're confident and we're moving very quickly to be able to turn things around. And again, to your point, we are aware of the transition, and we are aware of the opportunity that we have in front of us to be able to put things back on a sustainable path.
Just one more question. So what happened? I mean, I know many of the people who cycled through this school. They're very respected education leaders in the city. How are you not able to keep Chris Benikowski, Natasha Warsaw, I mean, yeah. How did this school cycle through these kinds of people in such a short period of time? I feel like you have to have that a clear understanding of that in order to right the ship. How did that happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you have uncovered, there were very real gaps and there were very real holes that existed. And as we identified the breadth of those holes, and as the existing board of directors asked questions, some information was brought to light. And, as it relates to Natasha and as it relates to Chris, they both have letters of resignation that are a public record. They resigned. Chris resigned for personal reasons. Natasha, our founder, of course, resigned. And, with that resignation came other changes that came with the organization. Again, we are very, very, very well aware of those changes. And I'm highly confident that we have the folks engaged now on the ground that will be here and will be with us and through us. I think that, we're working a plan that will show enrolled students in the seats come school year. And again, I'm highly confident that we're able to grab things moving forward and to provide sustainable futures for our youth.
So I just have to bring up that since these changes have happened, I haven't seen any changes in attendance rates or enrollment rates. We haven't seen you talking about these changes. Who is going to be your leader next year, and what evidence do we have in place right now of the urgency that you as the board chair are placing on the school?
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of urgency. Of course, as you know, we have our financial consultants who have engaged to work with the rectification of the 990 situation. We've engaged an external auditor. We have a consultant engaged with us to help us with recruitment and retention and looking at all things academic with our program. We have expanded and we've brought on new members to our board of directors. We believe that we are in a compliant governance place. We believe that we are moving forward and looking forward to, righting the ship. And again, we're here very honestly stating that there are challenges. And I'm confident that we can work through the challenges that are here, and that the folks that are in position are committed and passionate and engaged to see it through.
So you said that the enrollment outreach is being led by your CFO? COO?
Our Director of Operations.
Director of Operations.
Yes.
And that's Lauren Bryant?
It is.
So our understanding is that she's not returning. So do you know how long she's going to be leading the enrollment outreach, and when she leaves, and then who's going to take that over?
Sure. Janelle, do you want to?
Well, Lauren is not returning. We are very much committed to ensuring that the program is left in a place that is going to be sustainable for the program moving forward. The people on the ground this year have been through insurmountable odds. And the fact that they are still there, I'm sitting up here sharing with you guys, I'm not the one that does the hard work. The individuals in the classrooms, the individuals actually delivering the support services, the individuals ensuring that our students are here every day and reconnecting and bringing them back is the reason why we did see improvement within attendance. This is a people business, and one thing that I can confirm for certain without any question in my mind is that the folks that are here are dedicated to ensuring that students are served, the students we have, and the students of this population that we have committed to serve.
How many, besides you and Lauren, how many full-time staff are there?
Currently on staff 9 with 2 contract members.
And how many of them are returning next year?
At this time, about 5 have intended that they fully intend to return.
But not you and not Lauren, not the person running the school and not the person running the operations and leading the enrollment outreach. So we know you need 50 students. Right now you have 0. Let's say at our board meeting in July, what number of students would we need to see enrolled before we say, you know what, you're not going to make it?
Yeah. Again, I guess I'd have to defer to my operations and my finance folks. We'd have to put that number together.
yeah, increasingly you have no one to defer to because they're not on the team anymore or won't be there shortly. So what I'm missing at this point is the plan. So you've got, it's, May 21st, first day of school is end of August, let's say. And you've got 3 months of a tremendous amount of work to rebuild a school, a board, and recruit quite possibly one of the most vulnerable at-risk populations, which is the very reason why we chartered this school. So the next 12 weeks, who's running that plan? Who is part of that plan? Who's doing the work day to day?
Yeah, I think Janelle can speak to that. Janelle and her staff are on the ground, and they will be implementing that every day. And the folks that are on board and committed during the time that they're with us. And yes, folks have said that they will be going other places, but while the time that they are with us, they are giving us all that they have. And, to our point, we have a partial enrolled students that aren't showing as fully enrolled, and to Scott's point, that will show a zero number. But we are very confident that all of our students will turn in all the forms that they're supposed to turn into us, and that we will have a very, very real push over the summer, and that we will have the students that we need. And it's going to be an uncomfortable push because there's going to be a certain level of in the dark, and there's going to be an inability to manage that pipeline. And to be able to show that in a way that we'd be able to measure. But we're going to be pushing, and we are going to be enabling and enacting a plan, and we're going to have boots on the ground, and we're going to give it everything that we have.
And as stated, we are all committed to ensuring that the students that we're serving this year, the students that did take this risk with us, are set up to be extremely successful next school year. And so by June, the students that are coming in consistent, there's time set aside this week specifically to ensure that we're getting the residency verifications and the other documentation. Our partnership with Mary Center affords us the ability to schedule the physicals and to have those things in place to get that documentation for both re-enrolling students as well as interested applicants.
If someone came to me and asked whether I should recommend that they enroll in Sustainable Futures next year, given that we don't know who's going to be leading the organization, we don't know who half the teachers are, we don't know if it'll enroll enough students to get through the year, do you think I should recommend that student attend Sustainable Futures next year?
Scott, I'd hate to put words in your mouth. Again, I'm highly optimistic of where we are. I'm also very well aware of the challenges that you've outlined. Again, as the chairman of the board of directors of Sustainable Futures, I have a very real opinion of how I see and view our program, and I do believe in it. As for me being able to put words into your mouth, I would reserve and not to do that.
Can I just change the subject a little bit? What percentage of your students have earned high school credits to date?
So today, the actual percentage, to quote a direct number, I wasn't prepared to do that tonight. We have students who have mastered various competencies across the board, and we have students who have shown student growth percentile points. And so for us, the student growth percentile points is actually much more informative to show a student's growth. As you know, our students come in academic performance bands. So to see a student, the district psychometric average is 40 student growth percentile points per school year. At our midpoint school year, about 45% of our students had already made that 40% growth and somewhat more. That means that halfway through the school year, students were on track to make the 40 SGP, and that would give us a very, very high achievement rate for academics for this school year, which sets the school up in a great place to continue that progress using both the STAR goal setting metrics as well as our academic competencies. So for the students in the bands 3, 4, and 5, they will have earned high school equivalency academic credit. All students who have attended Sustainable Futures have earned various elective credits that will transfer out as Carnegie units should they need to transfer.
So just to, your goal as it's written is at least 75% of Sustainable Futures public charter school students will either score a grade equivalency of 10.0 or higher on the STAR reading or the STAR math, or increase 2 GEs over the grade equivalencies over the course of the year. Is that what you just said they're doing, that 40% or either get, is that?
So that's a yes and, given our population. As you know, a lot of our students come to us extremely far behind. As a result, the student growth percentile focuses on achievement and progress versus a 2.0 grade equivalent or a 10th grade metric. For some of our students coming in at the 2nd grade metric, a 10th grade metric is not realistic. This is something across the years I collected data and other information, was hoping to propose a charter amendment. We won't talk about this in a second, but that's something that better actually demonstrates progress for an alternative academic population. And so if we were measuring the metrics, it's kind of apples and oranges, but I could say confidently that we would be very close to being on track to growing to meeting those goals.
That you would be very close to being on track to going and meeting goals that aren't your charter goals, but other goals that haven't been proposed.
Using the goals that we're using with the SGP, growing to be able to meet those academic charter goals as written.
You also have another goal, and you know, of the 45 students that were officially enrolled, you've lost, you know, about a normal amount, about half over the time, and you've gained some. One of your goals was that students who exit will exit and enter into a post-secondary place or a career. Do you have that data on the students who have exited and where they are and what they're doing to show that, I think you've been calling them sustainable futures, that your students that you've touched have sustainable futures at this point?
Do you have that information?
The data for the students specific that we've lost this year were not lost for academic reasons. So they were lost for systemic reasons, issues around homelessness and housing instability, reincarceration, or violation of already existing probations and conditions with DYRS, among other reasons. So no, we do not have that data currently.
I have can I ask a clarifying question? So you submitted to us a lot of materials, Mr. Jackson, and one of them was about this March 8th board meeting that we've been trying to make sense of. Is there a reason why Katie Kaplan was not included on your list of people who should have been at that meeting? Since
Yeah,
it looks
and
like
Chris Pentikowski, I think that I may have sent you all a draft as I was moving a little quickly. I realized that I had not added that name earlier.
So should she have been?
She was present, yeah.
She was present at that meeting?
Katie Kaplan was present at that meeting.
And was Jabari Smith present at that meeting on March 8th?
I need to go back and
You state that he was. You stated the attendees was Paul, Rosalind, Jishan, and Jabari, and I want on the record that you're saying that he was present on that March 8th meeting.
Well, again, I'm not exactly 100% certain how to answer that question. I know that what we have put down was, you know, as factual as what was understood. Again, I don't want to dance around.
You were present.
Absolutely.
So was he there?
Right. So again, for what was written and to go back and forth, I don't want to misspeak, and I don't want to get harped up on something that could potentially. I don't know. I don't want to answer this incorrectly. But I do know that we have gone through very real measures to look at all of our existing bylaws and look in our governance, and we have consulted counsel, and I'm very, very confident that all of the actions that we've done from a governance standpoint are in accordance with the law in addition to our bylaws. And so, again, to not misspeak and to not, you know, and to not misspeak again.
So do your bylaws include taking of minutes and submission of minutes to the Public Charter School Board?
They do.
So do we have minutes for that meeting?
Yeah, we have organized those minutes and we have submitted those to the staff for them to upload to the portal.
We do not have minutes for this meeting. What I have here, Mr. Jackson, is that Paul Jackson, Rosalind Rice, this is from you that you submitted to me on Friday, and the board has this too. There is a list of people. Katie Kaplan was missing from that list, and then you wrote here that Paul Jackson, Rosalind, Jishan, and Jabari were present at that meeting. They were attendees, and that during that meeting you were elected interim board chair. Is that not accurate, or is that accurate?
Right. Again, not to misspeak in what we have written down. Of course, there was a name that was misrepresented there that I had incorrectly not put in.
But I think I'm trying to get at, was there a quorum?
Right. We believe that at the time that we had a total of 7 board members, and presently that there were 4 present to make the vote that we had. And so we do believe that we did have a quorum. But to follow up on that and to ensure that that all that was true, of course, we've engaged counsel, and then we engaged another board meeting to go about redoing some of those things that may have been questionable, making them whole.
So you were at the meeting on March 8th. Was Katie Kaplan and Jabari Smith there? Yes or no?
Right. Katie Kaplan was at the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm 100% certain. The names on the list, again, I'd have to go back through and I have to look at the board minutes. And of course, those minutes, you don't have those, but they will be submitted. And, you know, that will be provided.
The other submission that we asked for was notifications for all of your board meetings. You submitted to us the invite from March 8th. Jamari was not on the invite, which is why I keep asking. So it didn't look like the entire board was invited to that meeting. It looked like a select few. Can you explain why that might have happened?
Yeah, I know that when the former person who was in charge of setting out those meetings were doing that.
Chris Pensikowski.
In a variety of different capacities. Some were done by way of the email communication. People were notified by way of text message. We have, you know, gone through our bylaws to look and see, you know, those notifications and what that language is in our bylaws and what that needs to look like.
And who is currently on your board?
The present members of our board are me, Donald Hentz, Rosalind Rice, Jabari Smith, and Keith Brown.
And Jabari Smith and Keith Brown are both students. So you did not submit all of your notifications to us. You submitted this one invite from Chris, and then you submitted our own request for board-to-board, which wasn't a board meeting. You submitted the invitation, an appropriate request for a January meeting, but the remaining meetings that we actually have in question, which are the ones that were done since you've become board chair, do you have those now? You said you would have them by today, the actual invitation, so that we can know that they were noticed appropriately by your bylaws.
Yeah, we looked through all of the emails. We coordinated with staff. We had, again,
I'm just asking if you have them for us, because you were going to, that was our request.
Right. Yeah, we have worked to find those requests. Again, our staff has put together some information. I need to look through those emails, but we will be able to satisfy that for you.
When do you anticipate we will have the various documentation that we've now asked for?
We were supposed to have them on by Friday the 18th. They had 2 weeks to get us these requests. I want to put on the record that we started March 22nd. You asked to meet with us, and this is we have yet to meet. This is our meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And my goal was to really, as you know, as stated to you, was to coordinate and make sure that everybody was physically there, so that we could have a discussion where we were all eye to eye, and you could see the commitment from the folks that were on the ground. And I was working very diligently to try and get those folks to come out and to participate. And so,
but we weren't able to do that. And
sure.
I'm sort of underscoring the urgency of getting the school and your leadership and
sure.
your board membership present. It's been hard, because we haven't been able to meet, I'm assuming.
I can't imagine anything more important than coming before this board with the track record that this school has had over the last 9 months. So it's sort of hard for me to believe that in the next 2 to 3 months, both the board and the staff, TBD, are going to be able to do the work that we all know would need to go into it to have, even some, passable number of students enrolled, never mind the ongoing work that we all know needs to be done from a curricular and programmatic development as students go into their second year and as the school goes into the second year. So I'm just a bit exasperated in terms of what I hear. There's a plan and that there's intent. I just don't know how things move forward from here?
Sure. As a governance standpoint, my job is to put the management and staff in play to be able to bring that to life. Janelle and her staff are going to, and the folks that are on board are committed to being able to do this. And, respectfully, we need time.
When do you think you're going to have a head of school hired by?
Yeah, we want to put a lot of thought into this, and without any question, we know that we've had some very real and rich challenges, and with our very, very, very delicate constituency, it needs to be a dynamic leader, and we don't want to short that process at all. We really want to give it the thought and do the due diligence that's deserved for our population. And so, for me to say that I'll have one in place by July 1. I want to be honest about that we're going and engaging, and we're trying to find the right person, and we're searching, and we're working as hard as we can to find that individual.
Will they be in place before the start of the school year?
That's our goal.
Janelle, are you staying through the start of the school year?
Unfortunately, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction role is not viable at a 50 or 55 student budget.
So no.
At this time, we're still just focusing on finishing out this year and serving the students we have, and hoping to get things together and plan for what could be possible in year 2.
Okay. I just want to be on record as stating I would have serious concerns about a school continuing without a head of school at the start of the school year.
Can I ask about your curriculum? I remember we had a lot of discussions about the need to develop the curriculum. Is the curriculum developed for next year, or does that need to be developed?
So it's a two-part question. The curriculum as far as the competencies and the continua, which are the ways in which students demonstrate mastery, and they're assessed across the competencies and the academic performance bands, is developed, fully developed, in progress, and process now. The studios are developed and written, just like with any program. The academic validity as well as authenticity of each studio comes under review by each of the learning facilitators, which is why even in this last semester, as some folks have seen, students are preparing a very different humanities project than the one that was planned. They're using the structure, the skeleton, and the competencies, but the day-to-day lessons have been invigorated with the spirit and the desire of what the students are looking to perform, as well as the learning facilitators' passion and knowledge. So yes, the curriculum is developed, and of course a dynamic teaching staff will enhance it and add those day-to-day nuances that really engage the students authentically.
And can you, maybe we need the Director of Operations here, but can you walk me through how you take attendance and how that is recorded? And so if we were to go in and audit these numbers, what we would look for and what we would look to see that you had done?
So unfortunately, as we know, our population tends to come in a little late or leave a little early, with notes, of course. And that's probably some of the discrepancies in which some of the visual seeing of students comes in. The times, if I had the records and the data with me as well, when PCSB visitors have come in, what they saw, who they saw, where they visited, that could bring some light to the questions around discrepancies in student attendance. The attendance is taken when students arrive first thing in the morning. And unfortunately for us, some of our students are arriving much later than we would like them to. That has been an ongoing push all year to ensure re-engaging students, just like we spoke of in January with one-to-one connections. We had students so much so that when we had to ask a student to take a break from the community, he came to hide out. So the community is built, the students want to be here. It's overcoming the obstacles around transportation, childcare, housing instability themselves, and the general toxic stress and trauma that our students face every day that make it difficult for them to even want to come to school. One of our learning facilitators, as well as our student support facilitators and our director of ops, took a young man to Target to make sure that he had clothes, because part of his reason for coming to school was that he had got put out of his living situation and just didn't know where to go. And he felt that he was able to come back to us, plug in, and receive those services. And so while the numbers don't look great, the attendance is always reported accurately and authentically, which is why we were issued notice to begin with. We are doing absolutely everything to ensure that our students are getting authentic, real love, care, and academic service each day, whether it's 7 kids, whether it's 17, whether it's 27. We know that there are a lot of gaps in attendance. We know there's a lot of need there, and additional capacity for support is always helpful. That's something that we've leaned on partners as well as staff plugging in to really make sure that it happens. So we would be happy to share any attendance data necessary to kind of assuage some of the discrepancies and concerns in that regard.
Okay, so Naomi, I have to say I've never been on this board where we've had to issue a notice of concern for a 501c3 status.
It's a issue of a instance of
instance of fiscal mismanagement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that would be appropriate to do at this point.
And after we look into the matters of the board minutes, the consistency with the school's bylaws and our governance, the attendance, et cetera, we may be back before you next month as well.
All right. Can I get a motion?
Yes. I move to cite Sustainable Futures Public Charter School for an instance of fiscal mismanagement for failure to file its required nonprofit tax returns with the Internal Revenue Service for 3 consecutive years, resulting in the loss of its Section 501c3 tax-exempt status.
Second. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Ricarda, Don?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Great. All right. Unanimous. Motion passes. I would just ask you all to please respond to what seemed like a number of requests that we have as soon as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
Can you actually give a date? This is our third date. I mean, like maybe by Friday of this week or next week by Wednesday or?
I'm comfortable with that. By Friday, May 25th?
Yes, so we can have the
holiday
remaining.
weekend.
So maybe submit all of the board meeting minutes, all of the notifications, the appropriate notifications, no matter what their form was. I think those are 2 things we need right now for all minutes and all meetings that have transpired since you have become board chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Few remaining items. Consent calendar. So these are administrative contracts, compliance, calendar and annual report guidelines, revised data and document submission policy, and then smaller charter amendment changes that we must vote on. So 3 motions, if I could ask my board members to take each one in turn.
I move to read into record the administrative contracts over $25,000 in DC PCSB's compliance calendar and annual report guidelines.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don? Ricardo?
Aye.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Aye.
Excellent. All right. The motion passes. Second motion.
I move to approve DC PCSB's revised data and document submission policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And the third motion.
I move to approve the charter amendment request of the District of Columbia International School, Perry Street Preparatory PCS, Washington Global PCS, Rocketship PCS, and Youth Build PCS, and approve the DC PCSB board chair to sign the amendments on the board's behalf.
All right. Can I get a
Second.
second? Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. All right.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. All right. Next, Ms. Moreta.
Tonight, we're going to vote on revisions to the DC PCSB bylaws, which are the rules that govern the operations of this board, as interpreted by and in accordance with the School Reform Act. The last time our bylaws were amended was in May 2016, so the board has worked in consultation with DC PCSB staff to revise the bylaws to make sure they're up to date. All board members have been given 15 days of written notice as required by our bylaws. The changes we've made are largely minor revisions to fully align the bylaws with DCPCSB's current practices. While DCPSB practice remains consistent with the law, we last revised the bylaws almost 2 years ago, and DCPCSB practice has changed in that time, so a few updates were necessary. A summary of the major changes can be found in the board proposal. Are there any questions or comments from my fellow board members?
No.
Okay. Can I move to it?
You can move. I just wanted to say thank you to our staff and board members who have spent time updating many of our bylaws, which are obviously incredibly important to how we function and operate. So for bringing us into 2018. Thank you.
I move to approve the revised 2018 DCPCSB bylaws.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Ricardo?
Aye.
Excellent. Any nays? No. Is there any new business? All right. Before we close, I just wanted to make one comment. While I haven't had an opportunity to review the documentation that Ms. Jablow shared with us early on, I just wanted to say something in my role as board chair, echoing what Scott shared earlier with regard to the WMST revocation, the city paper article, and some of the concerns that were raised both in that article and through Ms. Jablow's testimony. As I think we've seen this evening and across the last several meetings, financial mismanagement, issues of fiscal matters are taken very seriously. I can say that as past board chair, now past Finance Committee Chair, now Board Chair, and Steve Bumbaugh in his role as Finance Committee Chair now. I want to just say I appreciate Scott's candor about what didn't happen as well as we would have liked. The same candor that he shared when we testified before the Education Committee several months ago. I will review the materials, certainly have reviewed what has been shared up until this point, and feel like while there is refinement of our processes that we will take a look at, I'm certainly comfortable with how we have operated up until this point. So I just wanted to put that on record, but again, appreciate, as always, the comments from our community, and we'll take a look at the materials that I've been given this evening. All right. Yes. Do we actually have more public comment? All right. I say that somewhat facetiously, Josh, but.
So after being up here the last time, I heard some stuff about heard a few things about the enrollment ceiling increase that I went back and looked at some data, so just give some updates. In terms of single campus LEA, there's at least one single campus LEA serving greater than 60% at risk that would be denied, outright denied, the ability to have an enrollment ceiling increase because of the 85% re-enrollment rate. If the board decided to consider a policy more relevant to the population that school served, the school would move into the for consideration category instead of outright denial. For multi-campus LEAs, under the current policy, only 2 LEAs would receive outright approval, and they also happen to serve the lowest percentage of at-risk students among all multi-campus LEAs. Only 2 more would even be designated for consideration, and neither of those serve greater than a 60% at risk. There are 6 multi-campus LEAs with a 3-year average of PMO scores above 50 that would be outright denied. So these, on average, these schools are doing better than our charter school peers and DCPS schools, and 2 of those serve 50% at risk or more. So we should really start to ensure that our policies are fair for all schools, no matter the population they serve. In reference to some things I heard from the board, that you want to have a high bar for ECI requests, and And Darren mentioned even specifically that a concern about our socioeconomic achievement gap is cited as one concern. Obviously, Empower K-12 is highly concerned about our city's persistent socioeconomic achievement gaps. But we do believe it's possible to use data and evaluation to sort of moneyball this to get it right. One area where we think that PCSB could support this effort is by having policies specifically designed to address the gap. So for example, PCSB could create an ECI policy that focuses on schools serving high at-risk populations and have tier 1 level growth. Or include a specific economic achievement gap reduction measure, similar to our Empower K-12 Bold Performance schools that look at schools who have high percent at risk and are beating the odds with achievement. Lastly, earlier tonight, when the board and PCSB staff discussed the re-enrollment rate business rule and the ECI policy, Naomi mentioned that schools serving at-risk students receive additional funding and could use it to improve their re-enrollment rates. First, if a school receives extended school year or extended school day funding, they don't receive the full at-risk student funding. It's important to remember that. Second, in 2013, the DC Fiscal Policy Institute published a widely regarded DC education funding adequacy study, and based on that study, even with the additional per pupil funding and at-risk funding, the city is still $1,000 short of what is considered to be adequate funding. Not optimal, just adequate. And should schools that receive at-risk funding use a significant portion of it on re-enrollment rate solutions for the highly mobile populations like transportation, then they will have significantly less funding for instructional interventions, out-of-school time programs, behavioral model implementation, mental health services, etc. And so given these 3 points, I just think that Empower K-12 doesn't agree that the increased funding for at-risk students is an appropriate response to our concerns with the at-risk bias and certain measures used by PCSB policies, including the school quality rating and enrollment ceiling increase. I think there's nuance to this, and I think that we can find ways to both, with data, address this nuance and still be basically moneyballing the achievement gap.
As always. All right. Any additional public comment at this point? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the May 21st meeting of the DC Public Charter School Board. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ricardo Don? Ricardo and Don? We don't need it at this point. All right. Motion passes. Thank you all.